In a world of superpowers, cultivation was supposed to be extinct, but he didn't lose it. He carried it across lives. While everyone flexes flashy abilities, he rebuilds an entire cultivation era from scratch. Knowledge from the old world, power beyond limits, and patience no one can match. It's a reset of the rules. When an all-knowing cultivator enters the modern world, everyone else just falls in line. Let's go. Having overcome all the trials, the protagonist Bai Shu, a practitioner of immortality during the tribulation period, reached the entrance to the magical realm, but lightning blocked him, and a god appeared before him to say that new participants were not being accepted as the realm was overcrowded. He should not be stubborn, otherwise thunder would strike and he would die. But MC was not going to give up so easily. He had trained diligently for 300 years to ascend to immortality. No one could stop him today. The old man unleashed the full fury of thunder on him and called him insolent. And MC rushed forward and said that even if the god hindered him, he would kill him too. He swung his sword, unleashing a huge burst of energy on the god, and then attacked again, shouting that even the heavens could not stop him. With all his strength, he dealt the final blow to the deity, after which his body dissipated, and the storm clouds retreated. The sun's rays illuminated his face, and he looked at the rift in the sky with a smile. He had finally reached the magical realm. When he came to his senses, he found himself in someone else's body and immediately felt someone's blows on him. They were hooligans who had cornered him because he dared to steal some woman of their brother Hu's. Bai Shu didn't even understand what was happening at first and thought, is this the magical realm? One of the hooligans told him to look at himself. Maybe if he pleased him, they would let him go. He remained silent, and then the guy pounced on him, asking, "Are you mute?" MC looked at him and realized that there were no spiritual energy fluctuations in his body, so this was definitely not the magical realm. He stopped his fist with one hand and stood up, asking, "Is he finished?" The hooligan became very nervous and wondered why he had suddenly become so strong. After that, Bai Shu kicked him, throwing him away, and the second bully lit a blue flame in his hand and said that he would teach him a lesson. But he had no time for it now. He couldn't understand why he couldn't use spiritual power. The bully pounced on him, telling him to learn the true power of superpowers, and he was slightly surprised because he had never heard of such a thing before. He jumped aside, dodging his blow, and said that he may have lost his spiritual power, but with such a low level of abilities, he definitely couldn't defeat him. He ran behind him, then punched him in the stomach, which sent the guy flying back. He ricocheted off the wall and flew very far, and his comrade meanwhile came to his senses and was, to put it mildly, surprised by this sight. MC meanwhile stopped the guy flying into the unknown, after which he put the two on their knees, and they began to beg him for mercy. He decided to let them go, and they, of course, ran to tell the boss everything. One of them told his friend that perhaps that idiot Li Zan's abilities had awakened. Hearing their name, Bai Shu was very surprised, and then his head was filled with memories of this Li Zan. That was the name of the previous owner of this body. When he was a child, he lost his parents and was adopted by his mother's friend, Liu Yiran. As a result, at a young age, he developed a disease called autism, which made him the subject of ridicule. It seems that intentionally cutting the sky did not help him ascend, but on the contrary, forced him to turn into a mortal and end up in this strange world. And the power that guy used is called a supernormal ability. Most people in this world awaken it within themselves, but the owner of this body is an exception. He doesn't know if the true owner can cultivate immortality with the body. Suddenly, Jishi's voice rang out and she distracted him from his thoughts with her worried cry. She immediately ran up to him and asked why they were bullying him again. She used her superpowers on him and said that if he couldn't fight, then he should just run away. Otherwise, he would get hurt. MC recognized her. She was his adoptive mother's daughter. She helped him every time he was bullied. The two bullied him because he was close to her. From the memories of the body's owner, it seemed that every time he was injured, she used her superpowers to heal him. It turns out that superpowers also have their attributes. After finishing with the treatment, she said with a smile that it was good that this time he wasn't beaten too badly. Otherwise, with her powers, he would have definitely had to go to the hospital for a while. He tried to clench his hand into a fist and wondered if superpowers in this world could be magic in his understanding. Since he didn't answer, she hit him on the forehead with her finger and asked displeasedly why he was silent. He stared at her in surprise and asked how ordinary mortals could hurt him. Ji-Chi crossed her arms over her chest, thinking that his autism was progressing, and he wondered if she was looking down on him like that. She took his arm and told him to forget about it. They needed to go home, as their mother was already waiting for them. While they were walking home, Li Zan noticed that this world was completely different from his previous one. There were endless tall buildings built in a row, and there was also a means of transportation called a car that could easily travel hundreds of miles, and all the people of all ages dressed poorly, exposing their skin. Although it violates etiquette, it seems to be a liberation from yet another shackle of his past world, and supernormal abilities are the forces dominating this world. He doesn't know the aura of this world, and whether cultivators will be affected by supernormal abilities. A difficult path awaits him in recreating a new world, but even if it is difficult, he will still achieve his long-held desire, ascension. Soon they reached their house, and when they took the elevator to the right floor, the girl happily ran to the door. But suddenly she saw someone and froze in fear. MC frowned, wondering who could have scared her so much, after which Ji Chengtian, Ji-Si's father, came out of their apartment. He had a very frightening look. He greeted his daughter, and she asked what he was doing there. He answered that he just came to talk to her mother about something. Seeing that he was talking to her, Liu Yiran immediately called out to him with displeasure and told him to get out. He straightened his tie with a smile and noted that she didn't seem very happy to see him, after which he extended his hand to his daughter and told her not to worry. He would come to her in a couple of days. She flinched in fear, avoiding him, after which he walked past Li Zan and told her that she couldn't escape him anyway. MC glanced at him and thought he was having an affair, but he and Liu Yiran reconciled, and eventually Ji Qi too. But he interfered heavily and controlled their lives. However, Li Zan's memory contains no information about this. He glanced at his adoptive mother, who was comforting Ji Qi, and thought that his appearance did not bode well, so he was afraid that there would be a lot of trouble in the future, so he should cultivate as quickly as possible. After that, he went outside to clear his head. As he walked through the park, he wondered, what in the world is going on? He remembered how the two of them immediately went to bed after crying, and he thought he wanted to know more. But first, he needed to practice. He sat on a bench and began to meditate, hoping that the true owner of the body could cultivate immortality with his spiritual essence. He needed to infuse chi into the body and imbue it with the spirit of heaven. Ancient Spirit is a technique he created in his past life. It can condense absorbed spiritual energy to make its realm stronger. It becomes even more devastating when it encounters immortal cultivators of the same realm. Streams of energy entered his body, and as he entered the spiritual realm, he wondered if the aura of this world was so thin. Even with ancient spiritual energy, it could only condense 3 spiritual powers. He began to feel chi permeating his muscles and veins, tempering his will, supporting his nature, and strengthening his spirit. And to achieve immortality, he needed perseverance, no matter how difficult. His entire body began to swell with heat. He gritted his teeth and wondered if this feeling could mean he had a rare body, something inherent to the Tao body. After that, the heat became familiar to him. His whole body was covered in flames, and he, looking at his hand, thought that spiritual energy was so subtle that he could practice it in the blink of an eye, but he still reached the 5th level of chi purification. Suddenly, someone called for help. He immediately looked up and saw a girl named Gu Tianzhen in front of him, who had fallen quite awkwardly, not far from him. It turned out that some lustful guy was pursuing her. He approached her and said that now she had nowhere else to run. Why doesn't she want to play with him? She backed away in fear and, turning to Li Zan, extended her hand and asked for help. He measured her with an indifferent look, and then the guy's attention shifted to him. He rudely told him to leave, and he, glancing at him, said that it turns out there are plenty of idiots everywhere. The guy became very angry and, using his abilities, said that he asked for it himself. Today he will learn the power of the 2nd level. Seeing the bright flashes, MC immediately realized he had the thunder attribute. He decided to test the results of today's cultivation, and at one glance, thunder turned to stone. The guy was surprised that he couldn't hurt him and asked, "So, he has superpowers above his own?" Li Zan pounced on him and said that only short-sighted idiots would focus on the so-called levels. The guy was terrified, realizing what would follow these words, after which MC punched him in the stomach. He fell in pain, and he said that superpowers won't get rid of everything. Suddenly, he felt something soft pressed against his back. It was the girl. She sniffed and said that he smelled so good, and he noticed that her blood circulation was too strong. Probably someone had given her something to drink. He grabbed her hand, pulling her towards him, and then poked different points on her body with his fingers, which made her feel good. She lost consciousness with a heavy sigh, and he thought that the bad substances had dissolved. So after a cup of tea, she should wake up. And then her brother, Gu Tianju, appeared. He thought he was going to do something to her and activated his level 3 superpowers. Li Zan slightly raised one eyebrow, after which Tianju pounced on him, threatening him with death. He immediately threw Tianzhen onto the bench, then dodged the guy's punch and noted that he was too slow. He grabbed his hand and said that although his cultivation level was no higher than the 5th level of chi purification, he didn't need any magic to deal with a guy with a low level of ability. And that would be enough. After that, he threw him against a tree, and when he fell, he put his foot on his head. The guy gritted his teeth and thought that he was too fast. He couldn't parry his punches at all. "Is he from the Supreme Academy?" MC asked. "Did he say he wanted to kill him?" Tianju stood up and cursed, saying he could humiliate him, but he shouldn't dare touch his sister. Just thinking about it made him burn, and Li Zan wondered if he wanted to use some kind of technique. After that, the flames suddenly flared up and could have hit him if he hadn't jumped back in time. Tianju shouted that he might not have mastered the technique yet, but his strength was enough to handle it. After that, he threw several fireballs at him, but he didn't even dodge, instead erecting a barrier field of his body's inherent Tao around himself, weakening all the blows. That's precisely why that level of flame couldn't even get close to him. Tianju, meanwhile, caught his breath and thought that his flames weren't harming him. So, his ability is Earth Elemental, but he doesn't think he has any superpowers at all. He asked who he even was, and he responded by telling him to think about himself better. His blood was boiling, and his heart couldn't take it. He was about to blow himself up. He was right. Tianju felt an intense heat that made him fall to one knee. He started to choke, but when MC abruptly approached him, he pulled himself together and warily asked, "What is he trying to do again?" He wordlessly poked several spots on his body, causing the heat to instantly subside, and asked, Does he feel better now? Realizing that he really felt better, Tianju looked up at him in surprise and asked, did he save him? He responded by saying that he simply misunderstood. He wanted to protect his sister, and he had no intention of killing him. Tianjin finally woke up. She was very surprised by her brother, after which she awkwardly walked up to Li Zan and thanked him for saving her. Tianju looked at her in surprise and asked, so it wasn't him? Did he save her? She told him that she had something to drink at the bar. Some man had accosted her, and this guy had helped her. Tianju realized he was wrong and attacked an innocent man, after which he awkwardly apologized to him. MC didn't care and said that since all the misunderstandings were resolved, he would leave. Suddenly, the old man's ringing laughter was heard. He said that since it was a misunderstanding, they should just talk it out. Li Zan asked who else he was, and he answered that he was their grandfather, Gu Wen. If not for his help, his dear grandson would have simply exploded. Could he invite him to his humble home and pay for his help? MC passed him by and indifferently refused, and Gu Wen said that, although he was a researcher of superpowers, he was also well aware of the secrets of ancient powers. He had just suppressed his grandson's abilities with his bare hands. His abilities are incredibly high, and his physical strength is similar to what he read about in books. He wonders where he learned this. Li Zan paused and thought, there is absolutely no fluctuation in spiritual power around this old man. He is sick, but it seems he can sense changes in his spiritual power. He is quite complex. He told him that none of this matters and left. The old man did not stop him, and Tianju, looking after Li Zan, asked his grandfather who he was. His body and strength are quite unusual. Tianjin smiled and asked, is that strange? She still thinks he is cute. He stopped her brother's self-destruction so easily, and maybe he can cure grandpa's leg problems. The old man ordered them not to spread the word and asked his grandson to get information about him. He wants to find him. If he really is legendary, then his Gu family will prosper with his help. A new day has dawned. Yiran entered Li Zan's room and giving him some clothes said that school started today, so she had prepared a new uniform for him. He was glad for her thoughtfulness and thanked her, after which Jishi entered the room and asked why he had suddenly become so polite. He was really strange. She hugged her mother and, pretending to be offended, said that her mother had specially picked this out for him, and it cost her 3 months' salary. She had never even bought her such expensive things. He looked down at the clothes and thought that their family was poor, yet they could spend 3 months' salary on new clothes? It seemed they really considered him a full-fledged member of the family. Yiran began tickling her daughter and said that she was always buying her things, which made her laugh until she cried, and asked Li Zan to try it on and show them. Watching them, he smiled slightly and thought that since they treated him so well, he should take the protection of this family upon himself. After that, they went to study. Yajin is an international aristocratic college with a first-class faculty and rich or noble students, where most of the students have superpowers. When he walked past the students in his new outfit, they immediately began to cast admiring glances at him. Noticing this, Ji-Chi said with a smile that appearance decides. In his new clothes, he looks much better. The guys also started talking about him. One of them asked his friend, he has autism, right? If he had said so, he wouldn't have noticed. Is this their school beauty, GC? MC glanced at them and thought that initially, he didn't have any powers at all. But thanks to Jishi's help, he has the opportunity to attend college. But he never thought that because of his illness, he would become an object of ridicule for these children. And then those guys and their boss, Chen Hu, appeared on their way. Jichi pulled Li Zan's arm to pull him away, and Chen Hu told him not to think that if he wore nice clothes, they would treat him like a normal person. His friends laughed, and MC thought that this guy was quite rich and influential in this school. After unsuccessful attempts to get close to Jichi, he often pestered the real Li Zan for being close to her. Chen Hu approached him and grabbed him by the clothes, saying that it was time to settle the score, and Jishi asked him to stop. MC gave him a threatening look and ordered him to take his filthy hands off him. Since he did not listen to him, he used force on him and already ordered him to take his hands off. He squeezed his wrist so hard that it turned blue, and he cried out in pain. Other students immediately came to the noise, and the guy said that this idiot doesn't value his life at all. How dare he touch Brother Hu? He has a level 5 ability, so it's gonna be a show. GC, meanwhile, looked at him in surprise and thought it was strange. Why did he become so strong? Li Zan, meanwhile, was thinking about abilities and their levels. The cultivation system is divided into 8 levels. The initial level of ability is divided into 9 levels. The rest are divided into 3 stages: high, middle, and low. The first level is the ability: Chi Purification, Manipulator, Chi Foundation, Challenger, Foundation Creation, Conqueror, Soul Birth, Possessor of Absolute Power, Deification, Bringer of Justice, Return to Absolute Emptiness, Threshold, Harmony, Ruler, Incomparable God of War, Killing Death, Triumph of Immortality. 5th level abilities are equivalent to the 5th level of Chi Purification Cultivation, but he doesn't know how strong the abilities are at this level. Chen Hu meanwhile ran to his friends and exclaimed, "Why did this idiot become so strong?" His friends said that maybe this fool had awakened superpowers. He had beaten them well last time, so he should be more careful. Chen Hu angrily hissed through his teeth that a fool who had awakened powers was still a fool. If he dared to joke with him, he would kill him. He waved his hand, sending his dogs into battle, and GC, shielding Li Zan, exclaimed, "What are they even thinking?" Even though their boss had taken a liking to her, they attacked her and said that Brother Hu's father was one of the university's managers, making him the boss too. MC grabbed the girl by the waist, pulling her towards him so that his fist wouldn't hit her directly in the face, and she blushed from such sudden closeness. Li Zan didn't pay attention and kicked the guy with all his might, while the girl wondered where he got so much power from. Maybe Chen-Hu was right and his abilities had really awakened? Suddenly, she noticed something. One of those bullies was right behind him. She warned Li Zan about the danger, and the bully, using his abilities, said that he had just awakened the crystal energy yesterday, so now he would beat him up good. MC turned around sharply, about to hit him, but he disappeared somewhere. A second later, he appeared behind him and teased him, saying that he was here. Li Zan thought it was interesting. It was a method of using the wind to move with basic control skill. Too bad it was only superficial. He spun around sharply, startling the guy, and then dealt him a blow that sent him flying a few meters. Chen-Hu got angry, called the two of them useless idiots, and decided to do everything himself. He rushed forward and used the Shining Strike ability, and then thought with a smirk that, as young Master Wanjin, he had already awakened superpowers within himself since childhood. Now he could use a Shining Strike, the power of which far surpassed attacks of the same level. Fighting a brainless person like him, who had just awakened his power, was as easy as crushing an ant. But suddenly he froze in place, and he himself didn't understand how it happened. MC only needed to touch him with a finger to stop him, and he thought in shock. How was he even doing this? Why had this idiot's aura suddenly become so strong? He fell down in fright and exclaimed that this was impossible. Only a 6th level ability could stop his Shining Strike, but he had just awakened his powers. Li Zan approached him and said that experience is everything, then measured him with a glance, thinking that his 5th level superpower was rather disappointing. He promised to protect this family, so idiots like him should know their place. Because he approached him, he trembled with fear and asked what he was going to do. He knew who he was. MC stretched his wrist and told him to listen carefully. From now on, he needed to watch his words and actions. After that, he started beating him, causing his screams to spread throughout the university. The students watching were shocked, and some were even glad that this idiot Chen-Hu was finally taught a lesson. After all his blows, Chen-Hu lost a couple of teeth and consciousness. Ji-Chi immediately ran to Li Zan and said that he really did get his superpowers. She was so glad that now he can fight back. She hugged his hand and kissed his cheek, which made him slightly embarrassed. Sometime later, one of Chen-Hu's friends ran into a bar with girls and told his father, Master Wanjin, Chen Xiao, everything. He asked if they were beaten by that fool. Trembling with fear, he confirmed this, and he, taking a drag from his cigar, said that it was so pathetic. If Chen-Hu couldn't handle it, then what's the point of losers like them? The guy fearfully begged him for mercy, to which he only grinned, and, using his superpowers, touched his forehead with a cigar, which immediately shocked him. He burned from his superpowers, after which the man turned to his subordinate and said that his son was the only one who could humiliate someone, but now he had been humiliated. Let him go find out what was going on. The ideologist of superpowers, Ren Wukong, bowed slightly and said that he would take care of everything. Chen Xiao smiled and told him not to overexert himself. He would let him personally experience the consequences of Wanjin's provocation. Time passed, and after the school day, Li Zan and Ji-Chi went home. She pointed a finger at him and said that although Chen-Hu deserved punishment, he was too cruel. His family was quite powerful. What if he got into trouble? He thought that a place called a university contained much more spiritual energy than other places. With the dual blessings of the ancient spirit and the true Tao body, he was able to reach the 7th level of Qi refinement in less than a month. If he focused on this, he could easily reach the 9th level of Qi refinement. She distracted him by waving her hand in front of his face and asked why he was frozen. Was he even listening to her? He told her that this place was cool, and she, staring at him in shock, thought this was the end. His condition was getting worse. They passed a glass building, and MC peered at his reflection, something bothering him. Immediately after, he grabbed the girl, and the glass shattered, sending shards flying everywhere. He reacted quickly and used his power to protect the people nearby, after which they ran. Ji-Chi asked what was wrong, then worriedly noticed that he had a wound on his face. He told her he was fine, then wiped away the blood, and thought that dispersing his spiritual energy to protect others allowed the attack to break through his true Tao body. Afterward, Ren Wukong appeared before them and said it was quite interesting. The man with newly awakened superpowers was able to repel his attack. Li Zan covered Ji-Chi with his hand and cautiously asked who he was, and Ji-Chi told him not to waste time on him. He was quite the manipulator, so they needed to leave. MC thought that with an aura comparable to his 9th level Qi refining, he had finally found a worthy opponent. The man asked if he was just pretending, or if he was truly a fool. He should think carefully. Had he touched anything he shouldn't have? Even though the master had asked him to be more careful, he clearly wasn't going to hold back. After that, he lit a flame in his hand, and an invisible hand grabbed Li Zan and lifted him off the ground, causing Ji-Chi to become uneasy. Meanwhile, he listened to his own feelings and realized he was familiar with this technique. After that, Wukong threw him against the wall, causing cracks to appear on the building's facade. He told him to go to hell and sent heavy debris flying at him. Ji-Chi called out to him worriedly, and when the debris crashed onto him, she burst into tears and exclaimed that he was an idiot because he had killed him. Wukong approached her with a smile and told her not to scream. Although the master didn't need her, he wouldn't mind feeling more blood on his hands. Noticing something, he immediately turned around. Fortunately, Li Zan was alive. He easily climbed out from under the rubble and headed towards the sky, noticing his interesting calligraphy. And then the man began to get nervous. He didn't understand how this was possible, but there was no time to be surprised. He used his power and asked what kind of superpowers he had awakened. MC closed his eyes, concentrating, and then suddenly opened them and saw the very hands he controlled. There were disciples in Tiantong who used these techniques. They were directed by the heavens and attacked with qi, and they were considered strong back then. He threateningly said that if he used his old tricks again, he wouldn't be able to harm him. He rushed down, avoiding the ghostly hands, and struck him from a distance, pinning him to the ground. Wukong stood up, spitting out blood and exclaiming that it was impossible. How did he defeat the Shadowless One? He concentrated all his strength and told him to attack again, then waved his arms, lifting up stone fragments and sending them at him. Li Zan wasn't afraid. He grabbed the stronger rebar he'd recently picked up and used the Linyue sword technique, the 4 types. Afterward, he swung the weapon, cutting the debris into small pieces. Wukong, watching his movements in shock, wondered if they were swords. He saw the great skill of an immortal practitioner in this guy, and then his sword pierced him, and he thought he'd been defeated by an idiot who just awakened his powers. MC put the rebar behind his back, saying that he had good skills, but he didn't know how to cultivate his body, which was why he lost. Wukong coughed, unable to speak, and at that moment, MC realized he wasn't holding a sword at all. He smiled awkwardly and thought that this world wasn't like the world of immortality he'd known before. Ji immediately ran up to him, asking about his condition, and he told her that such weaklings couldn't hurt him. She indignantly asked, "What? Was he having fun?" He'd scared her to death. Wukong distracted them, saying it wasn't over yet. If they insulted Wanjing, Master would definitely make their lives hell. Ji said they wouldn't provoke any influential people, and then someone asked them which gang he was talking about. It was Tianju, Tianzhen, and their subordinates. They sauntered up to them, and he said he'd like to see who dared to touch his Gu family. Hearing this, Wukong was greatly surprised, and Tianjin immediately ran to her savior. She pounced on him with an embrace under GC's jealous gaze, saying that he made them look for him. She clung to him, saying that he always smelled so nice, and he thought they were the brother and sister he'd saved that time. But what were they doing here? Jishi, clearly displeased, asked him who she was, and she replied that she was a friend of this hero. Jishi frowned and asked why she didn't know about this sweet friend of his. He replied that he didn't know them and asked Tianjin to leave him alone, to which she, upset, asked him not to say that. Tianju pulled her away from him and told her to stop pestering him, then bowed to him and said that he was naive and uneducated, so he hoped he didn't mind. Wukong, meanwhile, was still in shock. The Gu family is very famous. Their influence extends to many fields, including the military, economic, political, and scientific. They are unrivaled in Kangqing City. Even the local inspector in charge of law must agree with them. Wanjing doesn't hold a candle to them. Their family, who runs everything here, seriously respects Li Zan, but he acted so dismissive, as if he didn't care about them at all. He exclaimed out loud that this couldn't be, and MC looked at him, asking, has he calmed down yet? Maybe he still wants to fight? He immediately began bowing to him, begging for his forgiveness. He didn't mean to. It was all Chen Xiao's doing. He was simply following his orders. Li Zan wondered if he was talking about Chen Hu's father. He didn't expect their personal squabbles to spill over into his family's exploitation of power. Tianju said that Chen Xiao had previously been nothing more than a lapdog raised by his uncle Lian. After leaving his family to make money, he decided to form some kind of gang. Why would he even trust him? He turned to Li Zan and asked him to leave it to him. It was time to learn from his mistakes regarding their family's dear guest. He agreed and, casting a threatening glance at Wukong, said that if he dared to pursue him or Jiqi in the future, he should be prepared to answer for it. He stood up, said he understood, and quickly ran away. Jiqi approached her friend and asked, "What's going on here? Are they really from that powerful Gu family?" He confirmed it and, noticing that they were still standing there, asked, "What's wrong?" Tianju said they came about that situation. He'd like to invite him to their home to express their gratitude. MC said they didn't need to. Their family was so powerful that he didn't have to do anything that day. Nothing would have happened to his sister anyway. He went home, and Tianju excitedly asked him to at least consider his offer. Tianzhen quickly caught up with him and began to fawn over him, asking him to come with them. Otherwise, their grandfather will blame them. Noticing something, he glanced at her with interest, then unceremoniously pulled her towards him and thought that, although her breathing was very faint, it was quite obvious. She became a little embarrassed and asked what he wanted to do, and when he reached for her cleavage, Jiqi was shocked, and Tianju smiled and remarked that even he couldn't resist worldly temptations. Meanwhile, he took out a pendant from that place and thought it was an earth treasure. This upset Tianju. He grabbed his head in disappointment and said that he was just holding it and that he was imagining things. Jiqi said that it looked like he had fallen ill again and had suddenly become very interested in some strange little stones. Tianjin clapped her hands and said that this was her grandfather's ancient collection. It wards off evil spirits and nourishes the soul. If he was interested in this, then he should come to their house. Her grandfather had many treasures. He thought that her grandfather probably really knew what immortality cultivation was, and it would definitely not hurt him to obtain heavenly treasures that could help him, so he had better go and check. He agreed to their offer, after which they all went together to their family estate. It turned out that Gu Wen was already waiting for them, and even managed to set a sumptuous table. Looking at such expensive dishes, Jiqi was surprised to think, do these nobles really have any special rules of etiquette? Gu Wen smiled and told Li Zan that he had gone to great lengths to make his house shine. He invited them to sit down, but MC decided to get straight to the point and, showing him the pendant, asked where he got it. The old man's face darkened for a moment. He said that he had a huge collection of these old and shabby things. Was it something special that it caught his attention? He said that since he had a huge collection of these things, he should know what was so special about them. Ji-Chi, meanwhile, did not understand anything at all, and therefore felt offended. Gu-Wen laughed and remarked that he was an expert in antiques. Would he like to appraise the entire collection? He agreed, and Gu-Wen asked his grandchildren to take care of their guest for now. He called Li Zan to follow him, and Ji-Chi worriedly asked where he was going. Tianju smiled and told her not to worry. Their grandfather wouldn't hurt him. After that, the two of them entered the elevator, and MC thought that if this old man wasn't lying, he was afraid. There were too many magical treasures in this world for immortal cultivators. But these magical treasures were clearly not created by superpowers. So where did they come from? They descended to the bottom floor and exited the elevator. Huge doors faced them. Li Zan immediately sensed a familiar aura and became curious, after which they walked into the hall. Gu-Wen coughed, and MC asked what was wrong with him. And he, glancing at his bloody handkerchief, told him not to worry. It was an old habit. Li Zan noticed his wheelchair, after which he led him into the hall with his collection and told him to look around. He thought that with such a stockpile of magical treasures, there must be many immortality cultivars in this world. But then why was there no trace of them left? Although there are some weak supernormal abilities that shouldn't be flaunted, he noticed that he had a lot of things, but the quality left much to be desired. These were only trifles that would only interest a practitioner at the Chi Foundation stage. Gu-Wen thought that he had spent so much effort and energy on these treasures, but they didn't attract his attention at all. He was the one he needed. He said that he couldn't please his children, and he was rather ashamed of it. He also had one thing that, unfortunately, he didn't know how to use, so he wondered if he could figure it out. He took him to a display case, inside of which was a golden ring. MC immediately realized that this was the source of that aura. This was a cursed ring. Its special feature lies precisely in the name. Gu-Wen said that anyone who touched this ring would go mad, and in the worst case, they would simply burn alive from the black flames erupting from within. Li Zan looked at him suspiciously and wondered if he was testing him. He said it wasn't a curse at all, but would you? The ring responded to his words and immediately burst out of the display case, shattering the glass. Meanwhile, the old man was surprised that he knew its true name. MC extended his hand to the side, and the ring itself flew onto his finger, then began emitting streams of dark energy. The aura swirled, concentrating in one point, and the old man, afraid of being hit, erected a shield and asked him to wait. Then his eyes widened in surprise. The flames didn't touch him at all. At that moment, he realized that he really was the one he had been waiting for. Meanwhile, he thought that the Wuju ring wasn't a treasure at all, but it was helping him greatly. Although he would have to work hard, he must use this to his advantage. He closed his eyes and entered the spiritual space within the ancient ring, finding himself in a scorching land. When he turned around, he saw a three-headed hellhound growling at him, and he thought that in his past life, the master had tried his best to subdue the three-headed hellhound, but he didn't expect to meet it, reincarnated in another world. It was a pity that his cultivation had already been exhausted, and only a fragment of his soul remained. Suddenly, the hound growled and released flames from all three mouths at him. He took cover behind his shield and thought, is it angry? A wild dog that has lost its body dares to use spiritual consciousness against him? After that, the hound pounced on him, deciding this time to pierce him with its claws, and he thought, how can one compare his consciousness to that of some beast? He sternly ordered it to sit, after which the hound was immediately pinned to the ground, and it whined pitifully. Li Zan approached it, emitting his ominous aura, and ordered it to sit and obey him. The hound was terrified, causing it to immediately transform into a puppy, and MC, lifting the beast by the scruff of the neck, told it to remember that he was now its master, and if it dared to show disobedience, he would simply crush its soul. The poor hound cowered in fear under his threatening gaze. Li Zan returned and reflected that even though the hellhound only had a soul, it could use the Wuju ring to create a physical body with the same cultivation level as its master. If he was strong, the hound would be even stronger. The dog would definitely be useful to him in the future. He was distracted from his thoughts by the old man's enthusiastic voice, exclaiming that he truly was the man he had been looking for. He and his family were very happy. He couldn't finish speaking. The illness resurfaced, and this time, blood spurted from his mouth along with a cough. MC gave him an indifferent glance, after which, the button on the old man's chair began to flash, raising an alarm. MC touched his wrist and, after examining his meridians, discovered that the illness had been accumulating there for a long time, all due to the poison from Hengxin Ren. He wondered who, despite the power of the Gu family, would dare to poison the head. He then decided to begin treatment and thought that all this did not concern him at all. But today, luck was on his side. In gratitude for the ring, he would save his life. At that moment, the head's son, Damien, and Dr. Andrew ran into the hall. Seeing that Li Zan was doing something to his father, he ordered him to immediately step away from him, then ran up to him and asked what he had done to him. The doctor began examining him, and MC replied that he was saving his life. The man exclaimed, "Does he think he's completely stupid?" It was obvious that he wanted to harm the elderly man. Li Zan lit a black flame in his hand, mentally calling him an ignorant idiot. And at that moment, Gu Wen's grandchildren came running and started asking Damien why they were arguing with the master. He indignantly exclaimed, "How can they call some brat a master? Is the old man so stupid as to believe a charlatan?" Tianju told his uncle that he really wasn't a bad person, but he must have misunderstood something. He chuckled and said that he believed what he saw more. His father was more important now, but he would take care of him once he recovered. MC grinned, wondering how he was going to treat his illness, after which Damien called the doctor and asked him to help. He told him that he would do his best, and then used his healing superpower, hydrotherapy. He doused the poor old man with water, and Lizanne thought that manipulating water in the body to treat internal injuries was called water healing. But the poison had already penetrated the heart, so it was all useless. The old man coughed again, which scared his family, and the doctor apologized to them. His symptoms were too strange, his superpowers wouldn't help here. They had better prepare for his funeral. Tianjin burst into tears, disagreeing with this outcome, and Demian, with a grim expression, told the doctor it wasn't his fault. He pointed his finger at Lizanne and shouted in rage that it was all this brat's fault. He must have done something to him while they were gone. Tianjin asked him to stop. If the doctor couldn't do anything, then let the master try. She wanted to save her grandfather. He exclaimed that this scoundrel had harmed her grandfather. How dare she let him even touch him? He was against it. MC warned him that if he continued wasting his time, nothing would help his father. Demian called him overconfident and exclaimed that he had no right to say anything here. Andrew was the city's chief healer. He had never let them down. The current situation was because he did something to their old man. Lizanne pointed out that he had already prevented him from saving his father several times. He really doubted his medical skills. Maybe he had some ulterior motive and was just deliberately stalling for time. The man gritted his teeth, unsure what to say, but he was right. After that, he waved his hand and ordered the guards to arrest the killer. MC thought they were all a bunch of idiots, then snapped his fingers and ordered the hellhound to come out and play with them. As soon as the huge dog appeared behind him, the guards froze in fear, wondering, is this a summoning superpower? How could such a summoned beast even exist? Tianju thought he hadn't even reached the level of beast summoning. The master was truly unrivaled. Who the hell was he anyway? His uncle asked Lizanne the same question, and he approached him menacingly, saying he'd better be more polite, or he wouldn't be able to handle the consequences. He approached Gu Wen and noted that after some time, his condition had worsened due to a lack of blood, but that wasn't a problem for him. As long as the actual, unreal conditions are combined and the meridians are stimulated, toxins can be eliminated from the body. He waved his hands, and needles appeared between his palms, and Tianju wondered what he was doing. Tianzhen admired his abilities, and Demian grinned, saying that, if he couldn't be cured, he was even curious about what he could do. MC waved his hand sharply, and all the needles pierced various points on the old man's body. Andrew was shocked by what he saw. This was Chinese acupuncture, after all. Tianzhen asked him to explain it, and he said that Chinese acupuncture is one of the best medical techniques in the country. When used correctly, it can help unclog the meridians, strengthen the body, and eliminate evil. It's just that in their time, medicine increasingly uses supernatural abilities. Ancient medical knowledge was lost. He had only heard about it before. Lizan noted that there was a lot of information about it. Dark energy began to emanate from the needles, and he said that he was starting the final stage. The remaining poison accumulated in the heart vessels must be displaced with a surge of energy. He sharply injected energy into him, immediately after which he coughed, and his grandchildren leaned forward worriedly. Tianju examined him and asked if he really hadn't succeeded. Damien chuckled and said that he had told him he couldn't cure him. Then Gu Wen opened his eyes, and his grandchildren began hugging him, saying that he had scared them to death. He smiled and hurried to reassure them, while Demian was shocked. He had expected a different result. Gu Wen looked at his hands and said that he felt well for the first time since he felt ill. He thanked Lizanne for his help, and Lizanne replied that he was able to save him because he was here now, but in the future, if someone poisoned him again, he could only pray. Realizing that it was more than just an illness, Tianzhen and Tianju became nervous, and Demian, with a gloomy face, approached him and told him not to think that he could say such things just because he cured his father. Gu could do such a thing under the protection of the Gu family. His health had deteriorated because of his abilities. MC noted that despite this, he continued to slander, claiming that he had offended the head. He found no response to this, and Tianzhen said that her uncle had always seemed a little strange to her. After all, her grandfather hadn't been studying supernormal abilities for a long time. Her brother agreed with her and added that Grandpa had always been in good health. Although in the early stages he had problems with his legs due to his superpowers, he had no other problems. He started taking Uncle Damien's medicines, and only then did his health deteriorate. Gu Wen's hands tensed. Was his son poisoning him? Damien, meanwhile, grabbed his nephew by the clothes and exclaimed, "What is he talking about? Some stranger just said such nonsense," and he immediately began to doubt him. He doesn't believe his uncle? Tianju asked him to calm down. He was just reasoning. Gu Wen measured his son with a glance, then handed the master the medicine he had been taking, and asked if his son could try it to prove his innocence. While he was examining it, Damien exclaimed indignantly, "Does he doubt him?" Lizanne handed him the medicine and told him to drink it since it wasn't poison, but he became nervous, and his reaction made his father angry. Damien asked how he could disdain medicine, and Andrew said that he recalled Chief Gu saying that medicines made from various natural herbs were safe for ordinary people to drink. The man clenched his teeth in rage, silently telling Lizanne that he wouldn't let him ruin his day. How dare he frame him? After that, he pulled out a gun and shot the doctor, telling him to shut up, but MC quickly reacted and caught the bullet. The poor doctor was almost overcome with fear, and he said that he thought this could be considered an admission that the medicine was poisoned. Convinced that Demian was to blame, Gu Wen shouted what it all meant, and he exclaimed in response that there was nothing wrong with this medicine. That doctor must have poisoned it and framed him. He raised his hands and fearfully answered that this was not so. How could he dare poison the head's medicine? Li Zan remarked that he apparently would not give up until he saw the Yellow River. After that, he suddenly appeared in front of him and with just one wave of his hand disarmed him, and also tore his sleeve. Because of this, everyone saw red spots on his arm and began to wonder what they were, and Andrew said that they were not spots, but rather a scar from poison that corrodes the skin. MC said that when he arrived, he noticed that he had intermittent breathing. He poisoned Gu Wen's medicine with crushed red root. Over time, the poison penetrated his skin. It's not fatal, but it can take several years of life. This made Demian very scared and asked, does that mean he's poisoned too? But he doesn't want to die. He fell to his knees in front of him and said that there are only a few people in China who can cure the poison of red root. He asked him for help, and Tianjin, shocked, told her grandfather that he really gave him poison. His face darkened, while Li Zan kicked the man away, telling him to get out. After that, Demian turned to his father and said that he knew he was wrong. Because of his obsession, he made a huge mistake, so let him forgive him. Gu Wen said that he wanted to poison and kill his father, and also slandered others. He is afraid. He no longer has a place in the Gu family. It would be better for him to go to the inspection and refresh his memory. Already imagining how he would be tortured there, Demian was terrified. After which the guards grabbed him and he began to beg his father not to send him there. It was an inhuman place. After that, they took him away, and Tianjin said that she couldn't believe that her uncle could do such a thing. Aren't they family? Her brother told her not to be sad. It was fortunate that the master was here today, otherwise grandfather would not have been saved. Gu Wen, meanwhile, apologized to Li Zan. It was all because of poor discipline, which probably made him laugh. Now he feels great and would like to discuss something with him. Does he know where the belief about the Wuju ring comes from? After that, they went to his office and sat at the table. Gu Wen gave him several photographs that showed the relics of cultivators and said that in his youth, he once discovered a tomb and sent people to explore it. Most of the old collections, including the Wuju ring, were discovered in this tomb. MC glanced at the photo and thought that for ruins of such a scale, it must have been an era of spiritual cultivation, full of spiritual energy. Most likely, there is something else hidden underground, and perhaps it will help him in his cultivation. He inquired about the current location of these ruins, to which he replied that it so happened that while exploring the tomb, his subordinates foolishly triggered the mechanism, resulting in its self-destruction and collapse, so he will not be able to look at the ruins in person. However, if he really wants it, he will try to find the rest of the relics for him. He asked if he found it ridiculous that a supernormal researcher wants to help him with his practice. He replied that he didn't even know how long and winding the story was. When the old man was young, he was very obsessed with power and money. He thought that with absolute power over supernormal abilities, he could obtain both. But after thoroughly researching these abilities, the old man realized they had enormous flaws. This seemingly immense power, like poppy seeds, corrupts the human mind. But at the time, the old man was greedy and enjoyed the benefits of researching superpowers. He ignored all the risks and decided to continue his research. Little did he know that by peering into the abyss, he had long since sunk into its depths. Like a tormented soul, trapped in the darkness it so yearned to comprehend. The power of superhuman abilities far exceeds that of ordinary people. He fears that similarly innocent and reckless people will repeat the same mistakes, so he secretly studied ancient practices. Li Zan thought that creating superpowers was the creation of immortals who could become possessed by evil spirits, and Gu Wen said he dared ask nothing in return. The opportunity to help him was a blessing for his Gu family, but if he could teach him this art, he would entrust the future of his family only to him. The MC returned the photos to him and headed for the exit, saying that only when he found the relics could they discuss the terms. Meanwhile, the Wanjing Club was in complete chaos. Unsuspectingly, Chen Hu walked inside and happily asked his father how things were with that guy. Did he teach him a lesson? Seeing the debris under his feet, he frowned and wondered what happened here. What gang was this old idiot involved with again? When Chen Xiao turned to him, he saw his battered face and exclaimed in shock, "Is he really his father? How did he even get beaten like that?" Chen Xiao, in a rage, punched him in the face, causing him to fall, and exclaimed that he always causes him trouble. His son grabbed his hand, which was burning from his blow, and asked why he did that. He didn't answer him, in a rage, ordered him to get out of his sight, after which he remembered what happened here. Tianju came to him and destroyed everything because they dared to attack Li Zan. He clutched his head and told his son that he was an arrogant idiot. He had picked the wrong person to fight, and of all people, he had gotten involved with Li Zan. Wukong, who had also suffered at the hands of Gu's men, asked him to calm down and said that since the Wanjin had provoked the Gu family, it was useless to continue being angry with the young master. The top priority now was entertaining their esteemed guests from the east. Chen Xiao swung his fist at him and told him to hurry up. If he made another mistake, he would make him regret being born. He excitedly replied that he understood everything, and the next day arrived. Li Zan and Ji Qi were walking around the university campus during recess, and she asked what they had talked about with Headmaster Gu the previous night. When he left, his face was completely blank, but when he came out to see him off, he was beaming with joy. The MC replied that they were discussing some deals. The girl immediately imagined Li Zan and Tianzhen in wedding attire and hoped that they were discussing trade, not a wedding. The mere thought of this made her shudder and exclaimed that this couldn't be. She puffed out her cheeks in offense and said that he couldn't leave her and her mother, which made him look puzzled, and then suddenly someone called out to him. It was Chen Hu. The students noticed him, and someone said that Li Zan beat him up yesterday, and now he probably wants to settle scores with him. Chen Hu and his friend quickly approached him, but something happened that no one expected. They both fell to their knees in front of him and bowed their heads, asking for his forgiveness. The students were surprised, and one of them asked why he was talking to this fool like that. He's the principal's son, so what's he afraid of? His friend suggested the others not to provoke Li Zan in the future, since Chen Hu bowed to him so much. Meanwhile, the MC walked past them and told the guy to leave and not come near him and Ji Shi again. He agreed, and at that moment, the girl received a message on her phone. She checked it, and her look immediately became fearful. Noticing this, the MC asked what was wrong, and she, regaining her smile, told him everything was fine. They should go, otherwise classes would start soon. It turned out that Dongfeng Yuanshou had messaged her, asking to meet on Saturday. A few days later, a sunny Saturday, Yajin University. The protagonist sat in a meditative pose next to a huge football field. The students passing by him started chatting. One of them asked why he was frozen there. Did he even understand? He replied that he should believe him. He knew this special state of his very well. Another one added that they should speak more quietly. Chen Hu was supporting him. The protagonist released energy, and the guys stopped in surprise. They started shouting, "What the hell? Why can't he move his legs? Why did it suddenly get so cold? It's all his fault." He insulted Li Zan and he heard. Then the MC looked at them intently and thought, a bunch of unremarkable people who can't even stand the aura he involuntarily exudes. Shoo. He pointed a finger at them, and they fell to the floor wondering what the hell just happened. The firstborn of chaos. How creepy. The protagonist watched them go. They started running away, shouting that they were apologizing. He was wrong. They have to get out of here. The 7th level of chi refinement, the aura of the realm is very thin, and the possibility of cultivating to this level is the limit. It's a pity they don't know when Grandpa Gu will find a place full of spiritual energy to make a breakthrough in foundation creation. Then the protagonist picked up the phone and asked, "Hey Aunt Willow?" She said, "Oh no, Li Zan. Cheng Tian just came home and took their Ji Qi." He asked where they went. After a while, Cheng Tian walked forward and said, "All right, his good girl, they should go faster. His smart daughter." She walked past and he put his hand on her shoulder, and she added, "That's it, she will help him. But after this, they are no longer father and daughter." He said, "Ji Qi, she shouldn't be so callous. Come on." She threw his hand off her shoulder and told him to let go. He said he doesn't throw words to the wind, so he promises to never interfere in their lives again. They're here. After that, he opened the doors, and Dongfeng Yuanshou said that they haven't seen each other for a long time. GC. Meanwhile, at the entrance to the Drunken Dragon Hotel, MC approached the staff, but they shouted that they apologized. "Sir, the hotel is temporarily closed." He asked, "Where is GC?" One of the workers thought, "GC, the girl the Eastern Lord invited to his luxurious banquet. They can't let this guy bother the Eastern Lord." Then he closed his eyes and said that he doesn't understand who he's talking about. "Sir, their hotel is not a place where just anyone can barge in, so he urges him to leave the premises as soon as possible." The protagonist told him to move away, buddy, but the guard raised his hand and shouted that if he doesn't understand the words, they will speak differently. Several guards rushed at him, swinging their weapons, but their weapons crashed into the barrier, leaving them confused. What was going on? Defensive superpowers? MC repelled them with waves of magical energy. The guard shouted in fear, "What does he want?" Their hotel was booked by an Eastern family today. If he went in there, he wouldn't get away with it. The protagonist asked again, "Where is GC?" At that moment, Shen Xiao walked forward and shouted indignantly, "What's all the fuss about? If he disturbs their esteemed guests, they'll have no problem kicking him out of here in fear." The guard then pointed at the protagonist and shouted, "Sir, this man is the cause of all this trouble." He walked closer and, pointing his finger at the protagonist, asked, "Where did this wild guy come from, daring to cause trouble on his property? Someone, they should throw him in the pool and let the snakes have a feast." At that moment, his subordinate whispered in his ear, "Boss, it's Li Zan." He was surprised. "Li Zan?" And then the cigar fell from his hands and he smiled and said, "My God, it's Li Zan, his brother." He admits he didn't recognize him right away. He apologizes profusely. So what brought him to his humble hotel? He seems to be in a great mood. The protagonist asked where Ji Shi is now. He asked, "Ji Qi?" His subordinate whispered, "The Eastern Lord invited this girl, and she's with Li Zan." Before he could finish speaking, the hotel owner stepped forward and said that she was now in a luxurious room with her friends. They should take his brother there immediately. The subordinate said, "Yes." Then the employee turned to the boss and said, "Sir, if he lets Li Zan in, the Eastern Lord will definitely not forgive them so easily." He took another cigar and shouted, "What the hell else should he do? If they don't let him in, there will be problems with the Gu family, He should go and tell the Gu family everything and at least secure their favor. He bowed and replied, "Yes, sir." Meanwhile, Cheng took a cup of drink and after drinking the contents, thought that he didn't know that everything seemed so simple. Now a bright streak will come for his family. Jiqi, she must understand her father. Everyone is chasing fame and money to come to an agreement with the Dongfang family. He must sacrifice her, but it's not so bad. After all, this is a lucky match. Many dream of such a thing. Then he looked to the side in surprise and asked, "Huh?" MC approached him. He said, "All people are a herd that can't do anything worthwhile." After that, he stood up and, waving his hand, said, "Hey idiot, he needs to get out of here. He shouldn't force him." Before he could finish speaking, the protagonist grabbed him by the neck and lifted him up. He started screaming, "He has to let him go." MC said, "A father who betrayed his own daughter. He has no shortage of kindness. He will die by his hand." Then he threw him into the wall and told him to disappear. Cheng Tian, looking after him, thought, a demon, as if he had become a different person. Meanwhile, Yuan Shou said, "Jiqi, they haven't seen each other for so long, but she's still as irresistible. Her eyes sparkle like precious stones." As soon as he saw this, he lost his head. He reached out to her face, and she threw his hand away and told him not to touch her. He told her not to frown. "Jiqi, he's only joking." She took her purse and, getting up from the table, said, Cheng Tian invited her to have dinner with him. As she can see, they're finished, so she'll go. He took a sip from his glass and said, "If she wants, she can go. He won't stop her." But what would her father do to her mother then? She turned around indignantly and shouted, He told her to sit down and stay with him a little longer. "He apologizes, my dear. He knows he didn't make the best impression on her, but he also has trouble suppressing his emotions." He poured another round of alcohol and said that he actually came to set the record straight. She returned to the table, and he handed her a glass and told her to drink more wine, and they would talk it over. She knew she could trust him, didn't she? She took the glass and, frowning, thought, why was he being so kind? But if she upset him, her father would hurt her mother. He thought he had mixed the wine with an intoxicating substance he had bought on the black market. The person who drank it would fall head over heels in love with the man sitting across from her. She must drink, GC. Drink it to the bottom, and then she would be his. The next second, the hall door flew open. They looked at each other in surprise, and Yuan Shou asked, "Who else was it? How dare he interfere?" The protagonist walked forward and said that he came for GC. She approached him and said, "It's him, Li Zan." He confirmed it, and Yuan Shou thought, "Li Zan? That idiot?" He rose from his chair and asked, did he think he was trying to mess things up? He concentrated energy at his fingertips, then clenched his fist and shouted that he must die. She said in fear, "Li Zan." He covered her with his hand and told her not to be afraid. He said that he lost control, and then he released powerful energy, throwing Yuan Shou aside. He screamed loudly, spat out blood and hit the wall. He thought, what the hell happened? Where did he get such strength? The protagonist then pointed his hand at him and said that he had insulted his family. Therefore, he must teach him a lesson. He sent out a powerful energy, creating an explosion. At this moment, Ji Laikun, a level 9 bodyguard of the Dongfang family, stood in front of Yuan Shou, protecting him with a shield made of ultra-resistant metal alloy. He turned around and said, "Sir, you can't underestimate this man's strength. They should go to a safe place and leave the problem to his subordinates." He put his hand to his chest and shouted that he would not rest until he cut off his head. "He will kill him. Li Zan, he will die." He looked at him and then said, "Okay, sir." MC thought, refining chi, metal alloy? Then he said, "Today he will show you a few tricks." Lycan frowned and said, "He is strong and overconfident. No one dares harm the young master, so he will rip out his heart." With these words, his hand transformed into a firearm. Then the protagonist threw a table forward, shielding himself from the bullets, and Lycan began firing non-stop. Yuan Shou shouted, "Idiot, he shouldn't touch him." And the protagonist, easily dodging the bullets, thought what an interesting ability it was to gather true energy in the body and then reproduce it. But still, it was just a mediocre imitation of cultivation. With these thoughts, he approached his opponent and struck him in the chest with a single blow. Lycan then transformed into a sharp weapon. He aimed an attack at the protagonist's neck, but the latter grabbed his arm and flipped him over, slamming him into the ground. Lycan's mouth then opened, revealing a cannon from which a projectile was fired, creating a small explosion. Then MC caught all the bullets that flew out between his fingers and said, "Too slow." Lycan frowned and wondered if he had stopped even his advanced attack. Where did such speed come from? Then the protagonist swung his leg and delivered a powerful kick. At that moment, Lycan, covering his body with armor, thought, unthinkable. People with such strength and speed simply couldn't exist a priori. Then the protagonist jumped down to the floor below him, and Lycan, pointing his weapon at him, wondered if he really possessed an extremely rare combination of superpowers, a fusion of strength and speed. At that moment, MC appeared behind him and sent him flying with a single kick. After that, he pointed a magical symbol at him, from which a powerful beam of energy erupted, bursting out from the wall of the building. At that moment, Chen Xiao ducked, shielding himself from the falling debris, and turning around, wondered what was going on. He didn't need any trouble. At that moment, Lycan slammed his fist on the floor and said, "Where did he get these abilities?" The protagonist asked, "Abilities?" He had to think for himself. The gap between them was enormous. He, unlike him, wasn't trembling. He was a creature with a human face but the soul of a beast. He wanted to fight him? Lycan took a special ampoule and said, "His loyalty is unwavering." From the moment he entered the Dongfang family, he obeyed them unquestioningly. That's his principle of being human. No matter what happens, he will complete the task. At this moment, he used an NB-type energy amplifier on himself. It constantly increases the user's energy power for a short period of time, affecting their lifespan. His his body began to change. He screamed loudly, and his eyes turned bloodshot. His energy began to surround his body, and MC thought he had energy boiling inside him, similar to spiritual power, although it was slightly different. After that, Lycan's hands again transformed into firearms. He shouted that he must bite. He aimed several powerful shots at the protagonist, but the barrier reflected his attack, and he thought that this attack was truly stronger than the previous one. A crack appeared in his barrier. Then he flicked his finger and said, "It's time to finish." He set the Hellhound to attack, and the huge beast headed for Lycan. He thought, Summoner? This is his special ability, so this is his power. Then he conjured several grenades from his hand, and a powerful explosion occurred, sending the Hellhound flying. The next second, an even more powerful firearm erupted from his body. He screamed that he must die, "You idiot." Countless bullets flew forward, but the Hellhound, emitting powerful energy, directed them forward. Lycan, already smoking from overexertion, screamed that he would not give up. At that moment, the protagonist appeared behind him, and pointing a finger at him, said, "The outcome is obvious. Jiaoshu sword, first style, cluster." The attack hit the exact center of Lycan's head. The Jiaoshu sword, created by Bai Shu, now known as Li Zan, has 6 styles: cluster, direction, consciousness, thought, fusion, sixth sense. The sword with 6 styles has been considered one of the most powerful blades in the world of cultivation since its inception. The first style splits a person, piercing his heart. The next second, Lycan fell to the floor, dead. The protagonist walked forward and thought, what about a world ruled by ability? The interest in cultivating immortality and righteousness will never wane. Ji-Chi then ran up to the protagonist, hugged him from behind, and screamed. She was scared to death. He said, "It's okay, she won't be harmed." She then looked at the Hellhound and asked, "Did he summon that? This little dog? Where did he even get the ability to summon animals?" He said he was his subordinate. She asked, "Subordinate?" Then Cheng Tian helped Yuan show up, and he said, "Wow, a freak defeated a level 9th person." Cheng Tian exclaimed, "Son, be careful." Yuan Shou gritted his teeth and shouted in irritation. In his entire life, no one had dared to openly attack him in the presence of the Dongfang family. The next second, numerous guards surrounded the protagonist and GC. Yuan Shou wiped his face and asked, "Does he think he can leave alive?" At this moment, Gu Wen said, "You have to take care of your family." Yuan Shou was surprised by this voice. Gu Wen asked, "Does he value his family?" He put his hand to his chest and said, "Ah, so that's it, Mr. Gu." How could he forget that there was a Gu family that had nothing better to do than constantly cross the Dongfang family? He thought, usually the head of the family is nowhere to be found, so why is he here now? His father only invited him once, and it was all in vain. He doesn't even show up at the Chamber of Commerce. What is he doing here? Then Chengtan was surprised. Is it Mr. Gu? He thought, it's understandable why the idiot acts openly. He has the Gu family's support. Then Gu Wen rode up to the protagonist and said, due to his own carelessness, if 2 ungrateful people offended them, wouldn't he be angry? He replied that everything was fine, but Ji-Chi was a little frightened. He said that he felt terribly embarrassed in front of them. He should please take Miss Ji-Chai to a quiet place and get some rest himself. He should entrust the rest to him. The protagonist walked forward and said that he was lucky today. He would survive. Yuan Shou replied, just look at him, hiding behind the Gu family and even talking about saving lives. Then Gu Wen turned to Yuan Shou and said that Li Zan once saved him, so insulting him is tantamount to insulting the Gu family. Apparently, he needs to be taught some manners. After this, the guards grabbed Yuan Shou. He began to struggle and shouted, "Mr. Gu, why is this loser so important to him? Their families have always cooperated, and now he decided to ruin everything over some trifle." He replied, "How can the Dongfang family be their partner? Li Zan is the future heir to the Gu family." He was surprised. Mr. Gu was seriously considering siding with this idiot? Gu Wen turned around and said, the Dongfang family declares war on them, then the Gu family will fight. They'd better make a balanced decision. The guard grabbed Yuan Shou by the hair, and he gritted his teeth and thought, damn it, a quarrel with the Gu family will definitely turn into trouble for them. Cooperation will be almost impossible. The head of the family will punish him and no longer trust him to run the family business. And then the guard swung his fist and hit Yuan Shou in the face. He desperately said, Mr. Gu, he was wrong. He will never do this again. Gu Wen turned slightly and said, insulting Li Zan is unforgivable. This is his lesson. After a while, Yuan Shou threw a glass at Cheng Tian's face, smashing it into pieces. He was lying on the hospital bed and asked, didn't you know? Li Zan is his ex-wife's son, and he has an unusual relationship with the Gu family. Why the hell didn't he know about this? He replied that he really didn't know. He had just been informed that a large number of customers had cancelled their orders, and the Ji family had suffered heavy losses. Li Zan left him no choice, just like him. Damn Li Zan. Damn the Gu family. It would have been so much easier if the family leader hadn't been so eager to obtain the results of his supernormal research from the Gu family. Yuan Shou clenched his fist and said how he would have thoroughly enjoyed the suffering. After that, Cheng Tian poured water into a glass and said that his status was high, so it was improper to dirty his hands, and besides, the Gu family wasn't so easily harmed. However, they could get rid of Li Zan with someone else's hands. He held out the glass and Yuan Shou asked, he means them? Then he smiled, took the glass and said, exactly, he must let them send Li Zan to hell. Sometime later, Ji-Chi was taking a bath and the Hellhound sat next to her. She petted it and said, Li Zan has changed a bit lately and still says strange things sometimes, but he's no longer so weak and won't let anyone hurt him. He's also awakened a very powerful superpower within himself, doing things she's never seen before. When he gets serious, you can expect trouble. Then she grabbed the hellhound, and after that, she started slapping herself and screaming, "Damn, what is she thinking?" Meanwhile, MC was reading. He heard sounds outside the door and thought, well, of course he hasn't accepted defeat and decided to send a mercenary after him. However, this man's breath was warm. After that, he opened the door slightly and asked what he was doing here. Lycun stood behind the door, his foot on the wounded bodyguards. The next second, Lycun knelt down and shouted, "Mr. Lee, his abilities are incredibly powerful. His heart is immeasurably kind. He didn't kill him. He is a man of justice. He has already left the Dongfang family and wants to become his subordinate." The protagonist said he simply didn't want to get his hands dirty. He was free. Lycun grabbed the door and shouted that he was wrong. He begged for forgiveness. He was willing to do any job, if only he'd give him a chance. He asked for the reason. He got down on all fours and replied that he loved reading novels about heroes like him since childhood. He was completely out of his league. He had never seen such superpowers. He was definitely one of the strongest masters in the world. He wanted to be like him. Then he slammed his head on the floor and added, "Just let the master let him stay. Otherwise, he must kill him." The protagonist looked at him and thought, first he was a henchman of the Dongfang family, and now he wants to join them? Could it really be that simple? It was worth hitting him to bring him back to his senses. However, his physique and abilities are different from ordinary people. This could be useful. Then he said, okay, he must keep an eye on the door. This is the first order for now. He shouted that he obeyed. Master Lee. Meanwhile, GC came out of the shower and asked Li Zan who was there. He replied, Lycun. He will protect them all if he is not around. Then he returned to the door again and asked, is there something urgent? Tianjin stood there, smiling and waving. Hello, brother. Jiqi asked what it was this time. She said Grandpa had asked her to give something to her brother. Two bodyguards took out suitcases, and she, pointing to them, said, Grandpa said their family lacked a worthy treasure suitable for her brother. But he could take a look at this. With that, the subordinates opened the suitcases. Jiqi wondered why he was sending Li Zan something again. Was he trying to appease him? The protagonist looked at the items and thought, the quality of the magic weapons wasn't the best, but he could use them to craft more advanced ones. He said the only thing missing was a forge. Tianjin raised her index finger and said Grandpa had a forge in his antique shop. It was convenient to carry since it was sealed in a cube. Grandfather was worried that opening the treasure would affect its quality, so he wanted him to come and get it himself. The protagonist said he was leaving immediately. Tianjin smiled and said, okay. Jiqi wondered what those two were planning to do in the middle of the night. Don't. Then she shouted, it's too late, it might be too dangerous. The protagonist turned around and asked, is it dangerous? He thought for a moment. Is she worried about today's events? He said, tomorrow morning is better. Tianjin waved her hand and said, okay brother, tomorrow morning. After that, the protagonist closed the door and said, no need to worry so much. He took the girl by the shoulders and said that he wouldn't let anyone harm them. She lowered her gaze in embarrassment and said that she wasn't worried about herself. She was worried that he might be kidnapped. He asked, kidnapped? She shouted indignantly, idiot. The next day, Zhang Ming said, Miss Gu, welcome. And who is he? Tianjin took the protagonist by the hand and, smiling, thought she was so glad to spend time with her brother. Then she said that this was a very good friend of their Gu family. Li Zan. Ming, smiling, pointed to the store and said, in that case, he apologizes. Mr. Li, esteemed guests, if he is not mistaken, they came for Mr. Gu's antiques. He wants to accompany them. Then they went forward, and he, stopping near the items, said that no one had touched this treasure during his entire stay here. Mr. Li, would he please check it? He said that this is a low-quality product and he should get rid of it. Ming shouted in surprise, get rid of it? But this is the store's treasure. Then the protagonist looked ahead and used his ability. Tianjin followed him and told him to wait for her. Ming, but pointing her hand towards him, shouted, Mister, he should not go there. But the protagonist continued on his way and, turning around, said, what about this? Ming shouted, sir. They must look at something else, but they mustn't touch this. It's untouchable. He spent a lot of money sealing it. If it breaks out, it's all over. The protagonist then sent out a powerful wave of energy, destroying the barrier. As he got closer, he thought, the closer you get to the door, the more energy you feel. This is meant for him. Then Ming adjusted his glasses and asked, Madam, what level is Sir Li? She asked. What level? Manipulator? She has no idea. He was surprised. What? She added that she knows he's very strong. At that moment, the guy climbed onto the ceiling and, looking at the protagonist, thought, so that's where he is. After that, the protagonist opened the door and walked forward. He thought, a divine quality horn. Passable. Ming called out to him, but MC pointed his hand forward and commanded it to break. Several streams of energy burst into the object and burst out again. The protagonist asked, are you finally awake? The shopkeeper sank to his knees, clutching his head, and screamed in fear, it's over. Then the spirit burst out of the object and, laughing loudly, shouted, it's hungry, terribly hungry. Tianjin screamed, the horn is alive. She'd never seen anything like it before. Come on, little brother. The spirit shouted, brains, it wants his brains. It reached for the protagonist. At that moment, Ming continued to scream in fear. They're all corpses. The spirit rushed toward the protagonist again and screamed that it would eat his brains. MC aimed a pulse of energy at him, and moving back said how wayward he was. He needed to be taught a lesson. The spirit repeated again, brains. The protagonist uttered, Lingyu sword technique, second style, choke. A powerful energy erupted from the spirit, and it shrank in size and said, brain, it hurts. The protagonist approached him and said that he must serve him or die. A few seconds later, Tianjin ran up to the protagonist and asked, brother, is it over? He looked at the object and said, aha. Ming ran up to them and said, sir, that scared him to death. The next second, the protagonist turned around and, pointing a finger forward, asked how long it would take to kill him. The guy fell to the floor. He extended his hand to him and said, boss. He asks for forgiveness. The protagonist asked who his client was. He shouted, boss, he must calm down, he will explain everything, but first he must meet the king of hell. Then he set forward a low-level spider web. The next second, the web wrapped around the protagonist's neck and Tianjin screamed in fear. Brother? The attacker screamed, idiot. He mustn't underestimate the enemy. He'll cut off his head and get a reward. Then he thought, strange, why isn't it cutting? His web is stronger than steel, what's wrong? Then MC said, show him what he could do. The next second, a spirit burst out of the object and pointing its hand forward shouted, brains. The guy thought in fear, what the hell? The spirit pierced his body and shouted, brains. After that, the protagonist said, hey, he's his servant now and his old bad habits must be eliminated. He looked at him. After that, the protagonist crouched down next to the guy and, taking his hand, noticed the symbol. Ming shouted in fear, the Church of Blood Demons? The Church of Blood Demons is an exclusive organization of assassins that has existed for thousands of years. They obey no one, accepting orders only from influential and famous clients. They are crazy fanatics who will do anything to achieve their goals. A mortal mission is commonplace for them. Sir, who did he cross? The protagonist replied, Dongfang Yuanshou. Ming shouted in surprise. What? He had a falling out with the lord of the Dongfang family. At that moment, Tianjin called on the phone and shouted, how dare Yuanshou send a hitman to his brother? She was furious. She would call grandpa immediately. Then Gu Wen said that she must tell Mr. Li that the Gu family would not ignore this. In a bar restaurant, Yuanshou, with two girls sitting on his legs, said to Li Zan, it's nothing personal. He brought this on himself. Then he turned around and two bodyguards grabbed him, leading him out of the club. He shouted, hey, who's their boss? How dare they kidnap him? Then they threw him into the car, and he continued to shout, the Dongfang family will cut off their heads for this. Then he looked ahead and shouted in surprise, Xin Yun? The Dongfang family's butler, Xin Yun, sat in the front seat. Sometime later, at the Gu family's estate, Xin Yun dragged him by the hair toward the estate. Yuanshou shouted indignantly, Xin Yun, what is he doing? The butler then placed his foot on his head and said, the young master must understand the consequences of his actions and respect the Gu family. Otherwise, the head of the family wouldn't have been so anxious about handing the young master over to him. He then shouted, I, Xin Yun, offer this apology on behalf of the Dongfang family. Terminating the partnership will entail great losses for both parties. He hoped that Mr. Gu doesn't harbor a grudge and will reconsider. Due to his age, Yuanshou has insulted the Gu family. He has come to apologize in person. With these words, he kicked Yuanshou, who cried out in pain. Then Tianju came out of the room and said that grandfather said they insulted his benefactor. From now on, he's their family's enemy, asking them to leave. Right now, it's important for the Dongfang family to maintain the family tradition. Xin Yun said the Dongfang family was acting at their own discretion in this matter. At that moment, Gu Wen, watching from the balcony, declared that after what happened, the Dongfang family would never allow anything like this to happen again. MC asked, did he call him just for that? He replied, of course, it's not just that. He found what he was looking for. After a while in the car, Xin Yun answered the phone and said, yes, he understands. Yuanshou sat next to him and said, father. The butler looked at him and said, the head of the family asked me to tell him that he doesn't consider him a worthy candidate to succeed his business. He can no longer appear in the Dongfang family. Yuanshou put his hand on his shoulder and shouted, Xin Yun, he must beg his father to forgive him. This is all because of Li Zan. It's all his fault. But Xin Yun kicked him out of the car and told him to take care of himself, young master. The next second, the car drove away, and Yuanshou, frowning, shouted, Xin Yun, he's just his father's little dog. When he returns to the family and becomes the head, he'll be first on his list, and then he'll kill Li Zan and Gu Wen. After a while, the protagonist was directing magical items into the forge, and it began to emit smoke. After that, he said he would begin. The spirit handed him several items and shouted, ready. The protagonist looked at the items and thought, the shapes of the magical weapons are different, but they're all designed for defense. Any master can break them. At that moment, the spirit shouted, eat. He wants to eat brains. And the protagonist thought only a few blows could withstand this. After that, the spirit awkwardly said that he was hungry. Then MC left the room, and noticing GC, asked if he could see her for a second. He sat down next to her, holding the item in his hands, and she asked when he had managed to buy it. He placed the item around her neck, and she thought that this fool had become much kinder. After that, he said that he personally made a pendant. She should wear it, it will protect her. He will feel better this way, because he can't always be around. She asked where he was going. He replied that the Gu family had prepared something for him. She said, well, he should come back quickly. He replied, okay. After that, he walked out of the room. Lai Kun stood at the entrance and said, sir. He pointed an object at his hand, and he shouted in surprise, sir, "What is this?" He said that this thing would help him in his training. He should continue to guard the doors. If he makes a mistake, his life will turn into hell. He replied, "Yes, sir." Sometime later, in the city of Qingkang, a suburb, Tianju walked forward and said, "Sir, the Black Raven is an underground fighting ring. These are black market fights, the participants of which are people with superpowers. The owner of the Death Arena is an eccentric person. He will not allow members of the Gu family to enter his territory. Unlike them, the brother and sister." The protagonist asked if the two of them could apply together. He replied, yes, he was right. However, if unforeseen circumstances arose in the arena, they would block the master's entry into the ruins. Afterwards, they cast magical symbols on the door, and Tianzhen, stepping forward, said, "Brother, he should relax and enter the ruins with peace of mind. He can rely on them." He asked, "Are they absolutely certain?" Tianju folded his arms and said, "Master, their low levels don't matter here. The combatants must wear special bracelets to suppress their abilities. They will be equal." Tianjin said, "Brother's unquenchable fire and her icy spirit will easily defeat the enemy and save their lives. Isn't she right?" The protagonist sighed and thought that people with a similar mindset did not live long. Then he grabbed Tianjin by the shoulder and she was surprised and cried out, "Benefactor, what is this?" She wondered what this strange feeling was. Tianju approached her and said, "Master, sister." Then the MC poked him in the chest, releasing energy, and he burst into flames and started screaming. He thought his superpower had gotten out of control. What had the Lord done to him? The protagonist told him to concentrate on his feelings. He thought, feelings? His flames no longer burn him, they will become a part of him. If he uses his power correctly. The next second, the clothes on his body tore. He clenched his fists and screamed. Tianjin asked, "Brother, why did he stop controlling his power? Isn't it dangerous?" He looked at her and told her not to worry. "Sister, he seemed to have become different. The flames no longer harm him." She responded, and after his words, she also felt a change in her body. A pleasant aroma began to envelop her, a scent similar to the scent of her benefactor. The protagonist said that he had removed the seals from their chi. This is their reward for entering the ruins. After that, they thanked him. Tianju added, "He thanks him, Lord. In the future, he will become a great master, and he will go through fire and water for him." The underground arena, the Black Raven. A man, pointing a finger at the guy, shouted that if he lost another match, he would lose his daughter. He replied that he understood. A man next to them said that next time he would kick his ass. Another man said that he sold his eyes. Did he really lose? Tianjin, walking forward, covered herself with her hood and said, "Brother, there are so many bandits here." Tianju added that he must be careful. They are different from the people outside. Branches of the Death Arena have spread throughout the world. This is just one ring. The organizers have very strong connections. The supervision department here is powerless. No one monitors it. It has become a haven for bandits. The Gu family has no power here either. He needs to be wary of opponents with red bracelets. Here they are considered fighters who have survived several deadly matches. People with red bracelets are executioners with hundreds of similar battles under their belts. They are not to be trifled with. Then a man approached Tianjin and asked, "Do they know each other?" "Oh, it's that girl from the movie. Come on, let him take a look at her face." Then MC threw him aside. His comrade asked, "Is he asking for trouble? Why are there idiots hanging around here every year?" "One big headache." The protagonist told the man to get lost. Then the red bracelet. Luoshan put his hand on the protagonist's shoulder and asked, "Is he a newbie? Does he understand where he came? Why the hell is he starting to act up? He should kneel down and admit his mistake, and then he will think about whether to forgive him or not." Tianju shouted, "Sir, he has a red bracelet. Please, he must be careful." MC looked at Shan and asked, "Is that right?" He thought in surprise, "Who is he? How could such a strong aura come from such a young body?" Then the head of the underground death arena, the Black Raven, Xiangnan, told Shan to cool down. These were his esteemed guests. They were newcomers and didn't yet know the rules. He suggested they forget about it. Shan stepped forward and shouted, "The head saved him, but he shouldn't think he won't remember." Then, the head pointed and said, "Shan is one of the best fighters in his arena. He has a slightly hot temper, so he's often rude." He offered to lead them to a more suitable place for guests. Then he sat down at the table and said this wine was from his collection. Would the Gu family's guest care to drink? The protagonist thought that somewhere nearby there was a relic of an immortal cultivator. Tianju said, "Lord Nan, according to the pre-agreed conditions, he and his sister are participating in the duel. But does he mind the master's participation?" He replied, "It's their right. However, they shouldn't tell him afterwards that he didn't warn them. They alone are responsible for any consequences. Besides, they're participating in a duel to the death, and he's not losing any money. It's pure excitement." Tianjin shouted, "Brother, maybe he'll change his mind? It's very dangerous here." Why did brother close his eyes? At that moment, the protagonist closed his eyes and began to concentrate. He thought, a soul-stealing relic? That would be a problem for intruders. Then he told them to reserve a spot for him. He'd head to the ruins. Tianju asked, "Does the Lord want to see their results?" Tianjin thought, "It turns out he's worried about them after all." They said, "Sir, they won't let him down." He walked forward and thought, first, he needs to deal with the relic. After a while, the spectators on the death arena shouted joyfully, "Come on, he must kill him. He bet on him." The protagonist, watching the scene, thought, in the past, immortal cultivators often fought to the death, and the crowd loved it. The insidious relic steals souls, but it has a drawback. It doesn't affect the remaining soul. If he enters with a fragment of the soul, he won't be at risk. All that's left is a small matter. The next second, he released energy from his fingertip. Meanwhile, the ruins of an immortal cultivator beneath the death arena. The energy surged forward and the MC, in spirit form, flew on and thought, immortal cultivators erect such structures in places where spiritual power accumulates, so that time won't affect the contents of the vaults. But why is this relic so much trouble? Then he noticed the statue begin to move. He thought, as he suspected, the cultivators expected someone to split the soul and infiltrate the ruins, so they left guards. Their habits are somewhat similar to those of the Blood Soul sect in their prime. Then he placed his fingers on his forehead and asked, how dare he, a little demon, stand in his way? He then used Heavenly Chi Rift. A powerful energy scattered around him, then he flew forward and thought they were low-level weapons. What he wanted was deeper. The next second, a monster leaped straight at him. He thought, a soul-stealing monster? The protagonist extended his hand and said, tame it. Lingyu's sword technique, second style Path of Curse. A powerful energy rushed straight at the monster, and it fell to the ground, dead. MC spoke again. Several magic swords pierced the monster's body, and the protagonist thought he couldn't sense the exact direction of the formation. Most likely, it was hidden from prying eyes. Then he turned around, hearing a voice asking for help. He turned around, noticing Xian Ying, who was bound with seals and standing in the center of the magic circle. The next second, the chains binding her body broke, and she screamed. Then she sat up and said, oh, she's grateful. What's his name? Did her father send him? The protagonist thought he'd found the formation. After that, he said, if she wants to live, she must return to her body. She flew on and said, okay, and he won't go with her? She was the only one scared. She looked at him and thought, even though he's cold, he's handsome. Meanwhile, the protagonist's main body was watching the arena. He thought all that was left was to wait for them in front of the ruins entrance. After that, the host shouted, the next double battle will be between the Mo brothers, Mo Qian and Mo Ha, and the guests from the Gu family, Tianju and Tianzhen. At that moment, the old man sitting with the protagonist shouted, are they from the Gu family? Had he heard right? What were the representatives of the Gu family doing here? People were shouting, the leader is really killing it. He actually invited them? How long will they last? He doesn't want to admit it, but he'd like to see them die. He's betting everything on the Mo brothers. This is an absolute victory. At this moment, Moha leaned over to his brother and said, brother, it's the Gu family. What's wrong that even they came here? He asked. Why are they acting so sulky like little girls? In the arena of death, one must be willing to give up one's life. Victory deserves such a price. He took up his weapon and added, they've been on the brink of death so many times. Nothing scary. Spoiled brats should regret their decision. At this moment, Tianzhen concentrated energy in her hand and said, brother, they look strong. Tianju told her not to be afraid. The master has helped them, so victory will be easy. He charged. Tianzhen also launched an ice attack forward. The leader shouted, let the slaughter begin. They must watch. At that moment, Tianju used elusive flame, unleashing a massive amount of fire attacks at his opponent. Mo Qian, easily dodging his blows, asked, does he want to outsmart him? He used flash. Tianju thought in surprise, wow, it's like he's going supersonic. Then he frowned and thought, the game's over. Mo Qian swung his weapon and struck. Tianju kicked him, knocking him aside. Mo Qian concentrated energy in his hand and said that his move was unprofessional. He threw a clot of dark energy at him and shouted for him to take it. Tianju gritted his teeth and thought, damn, he can't see anything. At that moment, Mo Qian appeared behind him and striking, shouted for him to try his blade. At that moment, Tianzhen cried out in fear, brother, but Moha aimed a stone attack at her and shouted that she should think about herself. She cried out in pain, and the spectators shouted that the brother and sister weren't shining. Come on, we need to cut off his legs. They deserve their reward. And the girl is pretty. She looks pretty, don't you think? At that moment, the old man sitting next to the protagonist said, they were bad disciples. Why did they agree to fight? He lost. The protagonist thought, the outcome is a foregone conclusion. At that moment, Mo Qian slung his weapon over his shoulder and said, well, rich kid, his game is over. His blade is poisonous. He shouldn't worry. He'll take care of his little sister. Tianju concentrated energy in his body and kneeling, said that if he were him, he wouldn't be so confident. Mo Qian asked, what's he mumbling about? Tianju coated his fist in fire and said that thanks to the Lord, he had become a different person. It should ignite. With these words, he slammed the ground, setting everything around him on fire. Mo Qian, clutching his head, shouted, why isn't he poisoned? How is he still moving? He replied that black market poison wouldn't kill him that easily. He thought his flames were so elusive that the toxins entering his body wouldn't have time to cause harm. Lord, he's grateful for his kindness. At that moment, Moha looked fearfully at his brother, engulfed in flames, and shouted, brother. At that moment, the spectators screamed, he's lost everything. Those two idiots took everything from him. When did the rich become so powerful? High odds, he bet on the Gu family and won. He can pay off all his debts. At that moment, Tianzhen, approaching the protagonist, asked pitifully, brother, are they smart? He folded his arms and said he had nothing positive to say. Tianju apologized, saying, he apologizes, sir. They let him down. He said it was impressive. If they put in more effort, they would reach a whole new level. They clenched their fists and joyfully shouted that they would work tirelessly. Then Nan approached them and said, Miss Gu, Mr. Gu, he congratulates them on winning the competition. Their performance was something astonishing. Their control over their supernormal abilities was so perfect, even he wanted to participate. Tianju said, Mr. Nan, please, he shouldn't bother with pleasantries. And he told them not to worry, the sir will fulfill his promise. However, the fighter with the red bracelet challenged Mr. Li to a duel. For this reason, he was forced to postpone business. Tianju pointed his finger at him and shouted, Mr. Nan, they fulfilled their end of the bargain, participating in a duel to the death. Why is he sending Mr. Li into the arena? He replied, The Black Raven rules are this: an opponent with a red bracelet has the right to challenge anyone present, otherwise they will be banned for life. He couldn't explain to his superiors why he'd broken the rules. On the other hand, it felt like a favor to Mr. Lee. MC then declared that he would accept the fight. Tianju wanted to object, but he said there was little chance they could carry out their plan. They were relying on fate. Tianju bowed and said, "Yes, sir." They will watch his fight extremely closely. Tianjen wished him luck, and he stepped forward. He passed through a special barrier, and the system informed him to undergo testing after putting on the bracelet. The protagonist looked at the bracelet on his hand and thought, this is a magical weapon for suppressing cultivation. Not a bad device. At that moment, one of the workers adjusted his glasses and, looking at the monitor screen, said, "It's strange that the young man's strength is an order of magnitude above average. He's not a cheater, and he can't detect any other abilities. Who is he?" His partner told him to forget it. He'll die in the arena anyway. His opponent is a blood demon. Then the protagonist was told to come forward and not to be shy. He stopped near the high bars. The host announced, "Dear spectators, are you already anticipating their next fight? The show begins. Their next new fighter is named Li Zan. He's performing in the death arena for the first time, and his opponent has been close to death more than once. He's the strongest among the red bracelets in their city and in their arena. Blood Demon, Shan." The spectators shouted, "Mr. Shan, he must kick that pale face's ass. Come on, Shan. They've bet everything on him. He must crush him into dust." Then Shan squeezed the pointed pendant in his hand, releasing a few drops of blood, and approaching the protagonist said, "We meet again, boy." He said they would see each other again. The host shouted, "Let the fight begin." Shan waved his hand and shouted that he wanted to see his strength. The MC created a barrier around himself and thought his blood would have exploded if not for the bracelet. He would have shattered into pieces all over the arena. Shan asked, "Should I go on the defensive?" Then he directed an attack forward and shouted, "How long can he hold out like this?" His attack was reflected off the barrier again, and the protagonist stepped forward and said, "Lingyu Blade Technique, second style, Bihua Breath." The next second, several stones rose into the air, and Shan thought, he controls stones? His abilities are impressive. Then he wounded his hand and, waving it, directed the blood onto the stones, then onto the ground. He looked forward as the protagonist swung his weapon and leaped at him. He struck and the stone weapons flew in all directions. People shouted, "Lord Shan, he must get up. Is Lord Shan alright? Why is this newbie irritating him? He must kill him." Then Shan admitted he'd underestimated him. With that, he grabbed a huge stone and shouted, "Now he must bite this." He threw it at the protagonist and shouted, "He must receive." But the protagonist erected a barrier in front of himself, and the next second, the stone exploded, releasing a huge amount of blood. The protagonist thrust his right hand forward and thought. In a short moment, he figured out how best to penetrate his defense, despite his meager abilities. Commendable. A small wound appeared on his cheek. Shan shouted, "What the hell? Is he doubting him? He's the strongest red bracelet. He's the invincible king of the arena, the blood demon. He'll use the blood he spilled." The next second, the blood from the protagonist's face flew toward his opponent. Tianjen cried out in fear. "Brother," Tianju shouted. "Master." The spectators laughed and shouted, "Master Nan." But give him credit. This game is mind-blowing. The kid's brains scattered all over the arena. There's nothing more exciting than a fight to the death. Then Tianju clutched his head and shouted, "Master couldn't survive. If he hadn't led him into the arena, none of this would have happened. How will he explain this to Grandpa?" Tianjen placed her hand on his shoulder and told him not to worry, that the master would be fine. At that moment, Shan wondered why the victory signal hadn't sounded. An MC said, "He's more interesting than he thought." His opponent screamed in surprise, "What the hell? How did he survive?" He said another opponent would have surely died under his attack, but unfortunately, he was his opponent. Shan clutched the pendant again and thought there was blood on his face. He couldn't beat him. He screamed again, but the next second, several attacks hit him, and he thought, what the hell? Where had his strength gone? The protagonist said, "It's time for the Jiaoshu blade. He must fall." He aimed a powerful blow straight at his opponent, and Shan spat out a clot of blood and fell to the ground. The audience wondered, what was that? Why did he fall? The host said, "The results are clear. The winner of today's mortal battle is..." The protagonist walked forward and thought, the feeling of fighting to the death returned. The host shouted, "Li Zan." Then the protagonist walked forward and thought, "Now to the ruins." The spectators shouted, "Oh, come on, Mr. Shan lost." But he bet all his money on him. What's the guy's name? Li Zan? Another star has risen in the arena of death. They must follow the news to be the first to know about exciting events. At this moment, Yuan Shou took off his glasses and shouted, "Li Zan is about to die." Meanwhile, Tianjen ran up to the protagonist and shouted, "Brother." She was terrified, but it's good that he's okay. He's so powerful that even the red bracelet couldn't defeat him. Tianju added, "Mister, he admires him. He would never stand against him." The protagonist put on a new jacket and said that in the future, they would grow to his level. Tianju shouted that he would work tirelessly. Tianjen asked, "Seriously?" MC closed his eyes and thought that Shan's skills were worthy of praise. After the battle with him, his body defense had improved significantly. After that, they arrived at the office and Nan, approaching them, said, "Mr. Li is like a god. How did he manage to defeat the strongest fighter among the red bracelets?" He was amazed. Tianju said, "Lord Nan, is he trying to pretend that he doesn't owe them?" He replied, "Of course not. He would lead them." With these words, he pointed to the door, then opened it, and looking at the stairs, said that they should follow him down. They went further. He added that he apologized for being impudent, but for what reason did they wish to visit this place? Tianju replied that the gentleman had personal reasons and he should refrain from asking unnecessary questions. He said that he was not exaggerating when he said that anyone who went there was doomed to die. His little Shang-in fell into a coma after that. He spent an unimaginable amount of money on doctors, but all to no avail. And he, Mr. Lee, could have made a career in the arena. It would be a shame if something happened to him. After that, the protagonist said that his daughter was fine. He shouted in surprise. What? What did he say, Mr. Lee? At that moment, he received a call from Mr. Nan. The lady had regained consciousness. She had come out of her coma. He shouted in surprise. Had regained consciousness? How was she? He thought, how did he know this? It was incomprehensible. Did he really save his little girl? Then the protagonist walked forward and said that he knew where to go. He didn't need to bother. It was better for him to visit his daughter. He shouted that he had to leave now, but he expressed his deep gratitude to him. He would never forget his kindness. Then Tianjin looked at Tianju and asked how her brother knew what had happened to the arena owner's daughter. Did he save her or something? When did he manage to do it? He said Master Li's magic was beyond their comprehension. After a while, Shan ripped the IV out of his arm and shouted, "Damn Li Zan, he's dead." He rose from the bed, and the doctor extended his hand to him and said, "Master, he shouldn't move. His wounds haven't healed yet." At that moment, Yuan Shou approached them and said, "It seems they have a common enemy." He took off his mask and cap and asked if he would mind joining forces. Somewhere beneath the death arena, beyond the ruins of an immortal cultivator, Tianjin stepped forward and said, "What a smell." At that moment, Tianju looked ahead and thought, there are signs of a struggle, quite terrifying ones. Perhaps the master had already been here? Then the protagonist pointed a magic symbol to the side and thought, the soul-stealing system outside the ruins has failed. We need to go even further. He pointed a magic symbol forward and said, "A barrier has been erected at the entrance to prevent the master of the tomb from being disturbed." Tianju said, "It turns out that following him can yield a wealth of useful knowledge, master." The next second, a huge skull in front of them said, "He must give it to him." The protagonist frowned and asked, "Does he want to absorb it?" Then the skull began to crack and crumble. After that, the protagonist said, "Forward." Tianjin thought, wow, did one look kill him? Meanwhile, Sean emerged from around the corner and said that he'd seen a lot in his years in the arena, but he didn't know about this place. "Who the hell is this Li Zan?" Yuan Shou said, "It doesn't matter who he is, he'll die here anyway." After that, he turned slightly and said, "It's time to play his trump card." He looked at the two representatives of the 9th level of ability, of unknown power. Meanwhile, deep in the ruins, MC walked forward, and Tianjin followed him, saying that the further they went, the stronger the scent became. He thought, Tianjin's sensitivity to spiritual power is amazing. She has a great future ahead of her. Then he stopped, pointing to the side. Tianju asked, "Is something wrong, sir?" He gestured for them to be quiet, and then they hid behind him. The next second, several spirits flew in front of them. Tianju asked, "My god, what is this?" The protagonist said that ancient cultivators often used ghosts as guards. They could proceed further. Afterwards, they entered the room. Tianju, looking around, said how many magical weapons were here. Tianjin asked who had lived here before. Then she noticed a chest, from which a voice said, "I must help him, free him." She reached out to the chest, and then a terrifying spirit burst forth. Tianju cried out in fear, "Sister." The spirit grabbed Tianzhen, and she screamed for him to let go. The spirit said this body was his. Then the protagonist sent powerful beams of energy forward, hitting Tianjin right in the chest. Tianju ran up to her, lifting her by the shoulders and asked, "Is she okay?" She asked, "What happened?" Then the MC summoned items to himself, picked this up, thinking, a jade pendant. He suspected such things. Blood sects use them, so they're dealing with one of his representatives. Why are there identical sects in this world and his? However, the path to Taoism is through 3,000 worlds. Perhaps that's why the name and items are the same. The ancient relics are imbued with great spiritual energy. He thinks he's already close. The next second, an explosion occurred near them, and Sean stepped forward through the destroyed door and said, "Boy, he must remember that this isn't an arena. He won't hold back." Then the protagonist created a magical barrier near his comrades and ordered them to stand here. Sean said, "He will experience such despair." He fired several blood projectiles and shouted that he must die, but MC sharply dodged, then created a barrier and detonated the blood projectiles. Tianju said, just because he lost in the death arena, this freak gathered his minions to deal with the master. How shameless. Tianjin added, "Can little brother handle a mid-level expert and 2 9th rankers?" At that moment, the protagonist, looking at the attackers, thought, without a magic weapon, he had demonstrated average skill, yet he had broken through their defenses without difficulty. Moreover, he had the advantage of superpowers. This was a worthy opponent for his peak strength. The next second, he dodged the attack again, and, concentrating energy in his hands, created a weapon. He thought that the battle would awaken his true energy, a major leap forward for his cultivation. After that, he swung the weapon several times, directing several slashing attacks at Shan. He shouted, "What childish tricks!" He concentrated blood around himself and shouted, "Worthless idiot!" After which, he created several sharp projectiles from the blood and aimed them at the protagonist. He thought that when the blood coagulates, spiritual power accumulates within, causing an explosion. Apparently, this was his trump card. He used the Lingyue sword technique, 4th style, annihilation. The next second, another attacker jumped straight at him. MC dodged and thought, bait. His physique resembled a forest spirit capable of self-healing. What if? The next second, he left several cuts on his back, and a small explosion occurred. At that moment, Yuansho peeked around the corner and thought, Lizan, he's brought trouble upon himself. Tianju shouted, a fighter who can self-heal can produce endless blood, and another one is using it as a weapon. Have they really reached such a high rank? Tianjen shouted. Is brother in danger? At that moment, the protagonist rose up and used the Lingyue's sword technique, 5th style, Moonlight. Shan walked forward and asked, hey, is he still alive? Then he lifted the level 9 creature and said that this carcass could constantly heal, but it couldn't grow brains. Such are the costs of superpowers. His blood and body are his weapons. How long does he think he can last? The protagonist closed his eyes and said that if this is all he can do, he's overestimated himself. Then he pointed the Jiaosu sword forward and unleashed a single force. He swung the weapon and thought that now he must die. He dealt a few more blows and Shan fell to the ground. The protagonist pointed his sword at him, but he laughed and said that without restraining bracelets, he can explode like a volcano and attack with lava. Does he really think he can escape from him? Then he thought in surprise, how is this possible? The power of his blood disappears as soon as he gets close to him. How? Then the MC swung his sword and said, it's time to finish. But the next second, he deflected the bullet with his sword and looked away. At that moment, Shan grabbed his subordinate, and the protagonist fell to his knees. Shan shouted, does he think he only helps him regenerate blood, gas, heat, even electricity? Everything in this world can be useful to him. The warhead was made using a super powerful current. In other words, it will pierce any matter. It is his trump card. He must admit he has already lost. Then MC thought, I see. He snapped his fingers, and a hellhound appeared behind him. He offered to clarify who he is once and for all. Then the hellhound screamed loudly and used hellfire. Shan shouted, this schoolboy can summon high-ranking beasts? The next second, his subordinate fired, creating an ice shield. Shan crouched next to it and shouted, an ice wall won't work. He controls the elements, so he must freeze it. He replied, stupid. This is not an ordinary fire. How will he freeze it? Shan screamed, what the hell? They have to cover him. He'll kill the bastard. His subordinate shouted, yes. Then he scrambled forward, dodging the hellhound's paw, and shouted, damn. The next second, their silent comrade fell to the ground, and Shan waved his hand and shouted, screw him. After that, a powerful flash appeared near the hellhound, and the protagonist, breaking free from it, jumped straight at Shan, swinging his sword. The next second, a bullet flew past him, wrapping him in a fiery hurricane. Shan waved his hand and shouted, I got you. Then the protagonist attacked him straight in the chest and told him to disappear. The next second, his subordinate screamed loudly, covering himself in flames. Shan shouted, what happened? Did he lose the power? MC thought his superpower was similar to the celestial control of the 5 elements. It's a common altered spell, but one that should be handled with caution. Regeneration itself involves using the spiritual energy within the body. Sooner or later, the reserves will run out. Then Shan looked at another subordinate and shouted, even his body hasn't healed yet? He looked at the protagonist and shouted, what is he? He replied that this information was useless to him. Shan screamed, even if he dies, he'll take him with him. With these words, he ran forward and exploded, and the next second, a sphere flew in front of the protagonist. He thought, that's it. Tianjin cried out in alarm. Brother, is he okay? Tianju shouted, are they all dead? Wow. The protagonist concentrated energy in his fingers and replied, no, there's still one left. Then he waved his hand and directed the explosion beyond the wall. At that moment, Yuansho fell to the ground and Tianju shouted, Yuansho, him again. The next second, Yuansho knelt down and shouted, Li Zan, he's terribly at fault. He shouldn't have messed with him in Jishi. He'll do whatever he asks. He'll even be a dog. Only he shouldn't kill him. He asks him not to kill him. He begs for mercy. The next second, the protagonist passed by him. He turned around and wondered in surprise, is he alive? He then ran to the exit, shouting that he was grateful to Li Zan for sparing his life. Tianjin asked in surprise, why did my brother let him go? Tianju said that the master had a kind heart, but perhaps he would do something in the future. At that moment, Yuansho continued running and thought, what a fool he was to let him get away. He would pay for his kindness someday. The next second, many spirits reached out to him and began to devour him. He screamed, Li Zan, he's a shameless idiot. Tianju said, villains always get what they deserve. The master simply didn't want to get his hands dirty. After a while, the MC stopped near a ram-shaped statue with a sword stuck through its head. He thought that without them, he would have had to make a great effort to find this place. What an unexpected surprise. Then he grabbed the sword's hilt and thought that this sword was forged from meteorite crystal. Even in this state, it was incredibly valuable, but that wasn't what he had come for. The next second, blood began to flow from the ram's skull, filling the entire space. Tianjin screamed, oh my god, what is this? There's so much blood here. Tianju asked, could this be a trap? Master, he must be careful. He closed his eyes and said that they would have to deal with the remaining magical weapons in the ruins themselves. Tianju asked, Master? The protagonist walked forward and then plunged into the stream of blood. Tianjin spoke, and her brother jumped right in. Isn't this dangerous? Her brother told her not to worry. Master has everything under control. At least, that's how it should be. At this moment, the protagonist continued to dive deeper and deeper, and then landed in the boiling blood soul, the secret realm of the spiritual eye. He walked forward and thought, the spiritual eye is the center of world dissolution. It releases all spiritual energy in the world. It is a secret place in the ruins, and, surprisingly, the spiritual energy of the realm is not as strong as he imagined. Then he extended his hand and placed a flower in the sphere. He pulled it towards himself and thought that this flower only grows in places abundant in energy, but due to the lack of it, the flower stopped growing here. Where is the eye now? And then he raised his hand and the flower petals scattered around. After that, he walked forward and looking further thought, Someone has placed a seal on the flow of spiritual energy. What kind of power does this person possess? He placed his hand on the drawing on the ground, and then everything around him stirred, and he found himself at the edge of a huge magical symbol drawn on the ground. The next second, an incarnate beast from the 9th level, Chi Purification, appeared before him. The beast said, "Those who intrude upon the forbidden lands shall die." The protagonist thought, "A level 9th beast? Its intelligence is quite advanced." Then he asked, "Whom does it serve?" The beast kicked off the ground and, leaping upward, shouted, "Those who trespass on the forbidden lands will pay." With these words, it leaped straight at the protagonist. The protagonist dodged sharply and thought, "No, it's not advanced enough to communicate. Its master most likely sealed the energy, but why?" However, the seal's aura indicates that it can be removed. The beast must be purified. He used his true Tao body, shielding himself with a barrier, then jumped to the ground and directing the broken sword forward, commanded it to sever. He used the moon path, creating several cuts on the beast's body. He shouted, "Trespassers must die." The protagonist kicked off the ground and grabbing a piece of the sword, said, "Lingyue blade technique, second style." He delivered a powerful blow and said, "Strangle." The next second, the shackles shattered, and he thought, now he's revealed his true colors. The monster before him transformed and shouted, "Death to the trespassers." It extended several tentacles binding the protagonist's body, but the sword around him easily cut through them. The protagonist ran forward and thought he was far superior in strength. But this was both a risk and an opportunity. He thought, world cultivators are either based in heaven or earth. People progress from the highest to the lowest. The difference between them is colossal. The influence of cultivators is priceless. Earth cultivators are already considered the most powerful masters. Heaven cultivators, however, exist only in rumor. In a past life, he traveled the world and discovered an interesting, top-level technique, earth waves. Cultivating this technique requires pure and true spiritual power. Fortunately, his teacher helped him with this. MC dodged the attacks aimed at him again and thought that spiritual energy was so thin right now that advancing in the waves of the earth was very difficult, almost impossible. They say nothing in this world is perfect. Would he be able to cultivate like in his previous life? He jumped aside and thought, no matter how thorny and dangerous the path, he would never retreat. Today he would achieve it. He said, "Not a step back." Then he jumped into the attack and shouted, "Slash!" He wounded the beast's eye and then jumped back and noticed magical symbols on the ground. He thought, the seal and the soul are linked by the same source. If the soul is wounded, the seal will weaken. And then he noticed the symbols on his hand and thought, his body is absorbing the power of the seal. He will shatter into pieces, but he will fulfill his plan. He will achieve cultivation. Ripples of the earth, the power of the wind. He said that this must come true. Then he jumped to the side and thought, spiritual sword, this must pierce his soul. He aimed it at the beast and shouted, "Break." The next second, he dodged several attacks again and shouted, "No one will stop me today." He grabbed his sword and flew forward, shouting, "This shall sprinkle the air with blood, cut through 1,000 bones with its blade." Slash! He stabbed the weapon into the beast's eye and tossed it aside, using the Eye of Vengeance. Multiple eyes released energy, binding his body, and he shouted, "Back!" The beast advanced, and the protagonist landed behind it, delivering a powerful blow. He leaped upward and said, "This shall not be destroyed, shall not stand, shall not cause harm, and shall not be opened. Earth cultivation has been established." The beast screamed loudly. The protagonist looked at it and, dodging its attack, used a cultivation stage technique, a rapid movement technique. Then he concentrated energy on the tip of his finger and chanted, "Lingyu blade technique, first style, ice mirror." The next second, everything around the beast and the beast itself were covered in ice, but then the beast let out a loud roar, releasing several streams of energy directly at the protagonist, but he dodged and, grabbing the blade, chanted, "Jiaoshu blade power, second style, pillar." The next second, several more of his copies appeared next to him, and he said, "He's finished." He and his copies dealt a huge number of slashing attacks to the beast, and then the protagonist walked forward and, looking at his hand, thought that he didn't know who put him as a guardian, but thanks to it, he had achieved the Earthwave technique, and he dared to guess that this power was much more powerful than the previous one. What was the reason? So many questions and no answers. Someday he would find out everything. The eye would give him a huge amount of energy. He believed that he would soon regain his strength. Meanwhile, Tianzhen spoke, the pleasant scent growing stronger. Tianzhu said he also felt something had changed. Perhaps it had something to do with the master? At that moment, flowers filled the surroundings. Meanwhile, Gu Wen sat at the table and, taking a cup of drink, said, "The Gu family has been waiting for this day." After a while, Dongfang Yuan, the head of the Dongfang family, extended his hand and said, "Mr. Ji is a young man of great talent. He has achieved so much at such a young age. Yuan Shou should follow his example." Opposite him sat Ji Xuan, who said, "You are so kind, Mr. Dongfang. His family has an influential reputation in medical research and development, and he looks forward to working with it for as long as possible." At that moment, Yuan stood up and, placing his fingers on the device in his ear, said that he begged for his forgiveness. Tishuan took a sip of his drink and replied that everything was fine. Then Yuan went to the window and told him to explain. His subordinate said, "Sir, he has bad news." "Sir, the indicator installed on the young master's body has stopped transmitting. He's afraid he's dead." He replied that he understood. At that moment, Jishuan asked, "What happened?" Yuan approached him and said, "The dogs are causing a lot of trouble. He's already sent a subordinate to deal with it. Their business was much more important, and besides, the Dongfang family prepares the goods exactly as he wishes, and as quickly as possible." Then they clinked glasses. After that, Yuan approached the girls and said, Brother D, he'll just be out to get it. Jisuan took a sip of his drink and replied, please be so kind. After that, Yuan closed the door behind him, thinking that Gu Wen had killed his son. He would kill them all as soon as the Dongfang family became part of the organization. A few days later, the MC was concentrating his energy, standing above a huge sphere of energy, and then a chest appeared next to him, from which Shuyu jumped out and said, freedom. She then looked at the protagonist in surprise and thought, a heavenly level Taoist? Is she delusional? She should have been so talented. She wouldn't have had such problems. Then the protagonist, noticing her, slammed his hand on the ground. She jumped back in fear and shouted, hey, what's wrong with him? Why did he start fighting? She'll forgive him if he apologizes. He said the amount of spiritual energy his body can absorb is running low. If he wants to continue practicing, it will still take some time to refine the spiritual energy in his body to its true essence. He thought that if he can compete with an opponent of similar strength, the transformation of true energy will be more effective, requiring half the effort. Then Shuyu shouted indignantly, hey, is he even listening to her? She's a cat of omen. He asked, what? A cat that gazes into the heavens themselves? She said yes. She's a very popular cat. He turned around and asked how she got through the barrier. She replied that she didn't know, that she was grabbed and stuffed into this rotten box, and when she woke up, she was already here. The protagonist folded his arms and said that she didn't even know how she got here. He had no desire to get involved with her. She stood her ground and said, oh damn, he should wait, she'll get bigger. The next second, she transformed into a girl and, hugging the protagonist, jumped on him and said, Taoists don't know how to lie, cats are beautiful and useful. Will he allow her to become his companion? So what if he's a heavenly level cultivator? She's only an intermediate level cultivator, which means she hasn't forgotten her basic skills yet. In response, he looked at her and told her to get lost, then released a powerful energy, causing her to jump back and fall to the ground. She said that a kitty never makes a mistake in her choices. He is a true Taoist. She decided so. Then a huge cat's eye appeared in front of the protagonist. He clutched his chest and remembered how in his past life she said that the feeling of failure in overcoming adversity is not good. No matter how much he trained, he cannot escape fate. As long as he is by her side, she will help him survive the troubles. Then, he grabbed her in the present tense. He grabbed her by the ear and asked if she thought illusions would work on him. She told him to let her go. It was her fault. A kitty should not disobey her elders. She asked him to let her be with him. He told her to help him survive the catastrophe, and he will help her live longer. She replied that she was all ears. Meanwhile, Tianjin concentrated her energy. Tianju asked Sister why her strength had increased. She replied that she didn't know, but she thought meditation gave her energy. He wondered in surprise, was his sister a genius, and he just a loser? The next second, the statue next to them began to bleed. He jumped up and cried out in surprise. What is this? Tianjin shouted, brother's back. But he's not alone. Are there two of them? Tianju asked, who is this lady? Shuiyu introduced herself. She said she was a Taoist's companion. MC asked in surprise, huh? After a while, Shuiyu reached for the bowl, and Tianjin thought, companion, is this really what she thinks it is? Shuiyu said their food was delicious. Tianjin wondered if this woman was her brother's Taoist companion. At that moment, the protagonist thought there was a surge of spiritual energy nearby, but his cultivation is making progress. He needed to find the eye as soon as possible. Then Tianjin happily said, brother, she's reached level 4. He replied, keep it up. He looked at Tianju and asked, what about him? He awkwardly scratched the back of his head and replied, he's still working, but he thinks it will work out soon. Sir, did you hear what happened to Yuan Shou? They're worried they'll take it out on Miss Ji Xi and Miss Yuan, since they're related to the Gu family. He replied, there's no point in worrying, everything will be fine. At that moment, Shuiyu bit into a fish and said, the fish is melting. After a while, Laikun stood in front of the killer and said that he'd already told him that the person he was looking for wasn't here. He replied, it's a lie. He's a professional, and he won't deceive him. Laikun pointed his finger at him and said, if he doesn't understand with words, he'll explain with his fists. The killer immediately rushed forward, brandishing his weapon, and shouted that he would demonstrate his abilities. His blade will pierce him. But at that moment, Laikun held up a shield in front of him, and the attack passed through it, and he asked in surprise, what? The killer pointed a gun at him and said, mission accomplished. They had very similar strengths and even capabilities, but he was still better. He launched another attack and shouted, shining blade. The weapon pierced Laikun's arm, and he thought, damn, the wound won't heal for a long time because of its metal. Then he pointed the weapon at the killer and shouted, he's celebrating too early. The killer took a stance and told him to shut up, dog. He's the best killer. Blade tremor. Laikun's body became covered in armor, and he breathed heavily and shouted, get back. At that moment, the protagonist and Shuiyu were watching them from a nearby rooftop. Shuiyu sat down on the edge of the roof and said, you should have taken a quick nap, because the carnage is already in full swing here. What kind of ability is this? It looks like magic, but more complex. The big guy looks like he's about to be killed. He doesn't want to help. She looked at the protagonist and he replied, no need. Since ancient times, battles have been life or death. Only the chosen few could achieve anything. She said how emotionless he was. He said that if he couldn't defeat opponents of equal strength, then he had no right to follow them. At that moment, another attack landed in Laikun's chest. The killer stood in front of him and said, there's no point in defending yourself. Laikun started coughing, and then the killer swung his weapon and yelled at him to go to hell. At that moment, Laikun heard his name being called. He remembered his mother patting his head and asking if he'd been secretly reading novels again. Then he replied, Mom, the people who wrote this are amazing. He wants to do that too. She smiled and said, A person becomes strong by striving to protect the most valuable thing they have. Perseverance is the key to success. He happily answered, yes. In the present tense, his eyes lit up and he said that he wanted to become stronger. And the killer shouted in surprise, what? The corrosion didn't work? He jumped back sharply, and Lycun got to his feet and used level 10, Metal Fury, Ancient Lycun. The killer shouted, what the hell is this? How did his hand grow back? Besides, the metal is different now. What the hell? At that moment, Lycun swung his arm to attack, shouting for him to bite his fist. From such a powerful blow, the killer flew back and crouched near the wall. He shouted, a fight is a fight, but why burn clothes? Lycun swung his arm to attack again and shouted for him not to mess around. He better watch the fight. At that moment, MC said, well, that's it. Lycun turned to him happily, and he said that he congratulated him on reaching level 10. He saw everything. He tried hard. Shuyu meowed in agreement, and the protagonist added that he would teach him some training methods later. Lycun bowed and replied that without his bracelet, his profound strength would not have been released like this. He thought, the master has paid attention to him. He is so kind. Then the protagonist walked forward and said that he would handle the rest. At that moment, the killer put his hand to his chest and said that he was a pro, and he would rather die than tell anything. In response, the protagonist ordered Shuyu to talk to him. She jumped off his shoulder and, taking human form, said with great pleasure. Sometime later, the killer was sitting in the bathroom and wondered, shouldn't he be on a mission? Where is he? May was sitting in the bathroom across from him and running her big toe over his ear. Asked, doesn't he know? He's in heaven. He cried out in fear. Aunt May, didn't she go abroad? What is she doing here? She replied that she was here to reward him. She moved closer to him and added, he is very professional at intimidating and luring enemies into traps. Without him, it would be difficult for them to kill Li Zan. He was surprised. He's dead? She replied. She said it was all thanks to him. Does he think a good boy deserves a reward? He replied, he owes his professionalism to his superiors. They made him number one among the killers. Solving the boss's problems is his duty. He doesn't dare ask for any reward. He is obliged to do everything for the prosperity of his organization. She ran her finger over his chest and said, of course, kid, he is a real pro. He cried out in alarm. Aunt May, what is she thinking? He is an exemplary killer. He can't do this. Then she put her hand to his cheek and said that his body is much more honest than him. Deep down, he still wanted her, didn't he? He replied that she was mistaken, that he treated her like a mother. In response, she hugged him and offered to make all his dreams come true and savor his last moments, because this was his last moment. The next second, her eyes changed and she attacked him. After some time, Lycun looked at the killer's body and said that it was a special operation. Shuyu said that she thought he was having fun. Lycun wondered what he saw before he died. Why did he die? Then Shuyu added, Li Zan, the guy was sent by the Black Water organization. There is a person named Aunt May in this. She holds a leadership position. The gang has no connection with the Dongfang family, so what good reason did she have for ordering him? The protagonist folded his arms and told her to go and find out. Sometime later, in Chengje City, the territory of the Blackwater gang, several men carrying bags on their shoulders walked forward. One of them said that the purity of these crystals left much to be desired. His colleague told him to forget it. The Mu family doesn't care. The important thing is the quantity. Do you think anyone will notice if a couple of stones disappear? At that moment, his colleague noticed a missile flying towards them and asked what it was. The next second, an explosion thundered, and Lycun said it was time to start cleaning. The men pointed at him and shouted, what the hell is he doing in Blackwater territory? They should shoot him. At that moment, Shuyu attacked them and told them to calm down. Weaklings, could they even make her laugh? Then the man pointed a machine gun at her and shouted at her to die. She easily dodged the bullets and said that she could see all the bullet trajectories, so his efforts were wasted. At that moment, a rocket exploded behind her, and she said she was hungry and hoped that after the owner finished his business, he would invite her to dinner. Meanwhile, the leader of the Blackwater gang, a blind snake with a low cultivation level, asked why there was so much noise outside. Was the white tiger causing trouble again? The next second, the protagonist jumped through the glass in front of them. The snake pointed at him. The snake spirit shouted, who's there? The MC cut it and asked, did he order this? He folded his arms and said, Li Zan, what a meeting. A high-level cultivator with dozens of kills to his credit. Now it makes sense why his best mercenary didn't return alive. But he's so brazen. If he showed up, he probably won't last long. The protagonist waved his weapon and said he came for it. He shouldn't have messed with him. At that moment, Mufeng parried his attack. The protagonist frowned and thought, final stage cultivation? The snake said he didn't want to upset Lady Mu. Mufeng said Aunt May isn't here. Who does he think runs the organization? Important negotiations will take place today, which must not be disrupted under any circumstances. Otherwise, who will answer to Aunt May for this? He's currently the acting head. Success and cooperation with him today depend on Lady Mu's support. She's confident she'll make the right decision. She hopes he'll keep his word. The protagonist said she has the potential to be a remarkable person, so why did she get involved with him? The girl sent a blast of energy at him and shouted, it's none of his business. The creature then shouted, No one dares interfere with the Mu family's negotiations. Then furniture fell on him and he jumped back and asked, did she bring the box to life? Mu Feng looked at him and said, he'll come and regret his birth. The protagonist created a weapon and said, interesting. She said, he decided to attack her chimeras with this broken blade. He shouldn't make her laugh. She directed an atomic flame at him. The MC responded by using the Lingwei sword technique. Mu Feng said her fire could melt metal, but she couldn't handle this stump. Then she looked up in surprise and asked, did he just cut her puppet apart like that? She was in big trouble. Then the protagonist ran at her and she said, but all is not lost yet. She pointed the puppet at him and told him not to underestimate her. Weapons flew around, and the protagonist wondered if the box contained firearms. The girl could control a large number of chimeras. He dodged the attack and said, it's good that he has experience in the real world, and yet she hasn't yet reached his level. With these words, he swung his weapon. The snake was surprised. Who is he? And then he shouted, Miss Mu, she must be careful. The protagonist walked forward and asked, is this her forte as a manipulator? He thought about his previous encounter with the Tang clan. They had similar abilities, but the difference was still noticeable. Perhaps the lack of spiritual energy in this world is the reason why people with superpowers are so common. Ability enhanced. Then Mu Feng said that she admitted defeat, so it would be better to discuss other matters. What he mentioned had nothing to do with her. The snake said, Lady Mu, she can't just abandon him like that. The protagonist told her to tell him about the people behind her. The next second, she released threads from her fingers and said how easily he fell for her trick. The sonic drill, the nets. The protagonist walked forward and thought, showing submissiveness, so that he would relax his caution. Further confirmation that no one can be trusted. Knowing that she wouldn't be able to get close to him directly, she decided to close the distance. She aimed the threads at his vital organs. Does she think he won't have time to attack? The next second, his body was covered in stone. The snake smiled and said, Lady Mu, why is she hesitating? She must kill him. She asked, does he think she can kill him? Then the protagonist said, blade. And a powerful stream of fire erupted from the protagonist's body, and Mu Feng cried out in surprise. What's going on? MC said he didn't originally intend to kill her, but apparently he had no choice. The snake shouted, she must use her full power already. She directed her attacks forward and shouted, does he seriously think she's from Blackwater? Her attack slammed into the box, and she wondered, how was that possible? Why was he controlling her chimera? The protagonist told her to step back, and the snake took Mu Feng's hand and asked, Ms. Mu, does she have another plan? She must finish him off quickly. She thought that she believed he was from an influential family. It would be nice if they became partners. Then she said, she is Mu Feng, the second daughter of the Mu family. She apologizes for her ignorance. She hopes she didn't offend him. He looked at her and asked, are you tired of fighting? In response, she bowed and said, sir, he can make himself at home. She'll go get some tea. The snake cried out in surprise. Mu Feng, did she forget their agreement? She looked at him and asked, doesn't he still understand? Her family wouldn't have paid attention to him if he didn't possess the spiritual stones. Then the snake ran up to the protagonist and asked, how dare he? Aunt Mei and the Dongfang family won't let this go. The next second, the protagonist attacked him with his weapon and told him to calm down. They would soon end up like him. Meanwhile, Shang Ying blushed with embarrassment, imagining the protagonist hugging her. She said, Mr. Li left before she woke up, and she so wanted to thank him for his kindness. If they fell in love, they would get married and have children within 3 years. At that moment, her father placed his hand on her head and told her to think about her studies, not boys. Li Zan is a high flyer. He enjoys the support of the Gu family. She hardly had any luck with him. She asked, Daddy, what is he talking about? He smiled and told her not to worry, that he would seek help from the death arena someday, and she would meet him there again. Meanwhile, the men burst into the room, and one of them shouted, Boss! He noticed the protagonist and shouted, who the hell is he? He turned around and asked, do they want to fight him? They looked at him thoughtfully, then abruptly dropped to their knees, and one of them shouted for him to accept them. The MC said, smart ones. Then Zhu Wei, the second head of Blackwater, said that in their base, the top position goes to the strongest. Blind Snake defeated him and took over the role of leader of Blackwater. The person who defeats him will become their boss. These are the rules set by Aunt Mei. The protagonist asked, Aunt Mei? Yes, the woman everyone is constantly talking about. Then he sat down on the throne and told them to tell her that the leader had changed. At that moment, Mu Feng thought, this man is used to keeping everything under control. He has no shortage of arrogance. Aunt Mei is the real leader of the gang. She has a very close relationship with the Dark Pavilion. Then Zhu Wei said, yes, they are deviating immediately. He thought, he shouldn't anger this woman. Oh no. As soon as she gets rid of him, the position of leader will pass to him again. Then the protagonist looked at Mu Feng and asked, is she still here? She replied, sir, the Mu family specializes in the production of special additives. They own numerous deposits of medicinal raw materials, but due to the lack of effective purification technology, they were forced to cooperate with a blind snake. Can he give her family a chance to become the first leader of Blackwater? He asked, medicinal raw materials? He would like to see it. Where is it? She replied, in Clear Bay. It's a 3-hour drive from here. He told her to take him there, and she answered hesitantly, they wouldn't let him in without a pass. She needed time to request permission for it. He passed her and said, okay. When she receives it, let her come to him immediately. Sometime later, at the border of Blackwater territory, Shuyu knelt down and, looking at the protagonist, said, finally, the master has come. She's been waiting for him for for so long. He said, Shui Yu, she will go with him, and he must make sure there is no commotion here. Lai Kun nodded and said, yes sir. Then Shui Yu followed the protagonist and asked, did the master tell the big boy to stay and guard the house and took her with him? He replied, yes. After some time, she was enjoying the fish again and said, he likes her better, after all. At that moment, Tianjin stroked her head and said, kitty, she should eat more slowly. At this moment, Gu Wen rode up to the protagonist and congratulated them, their strength having reached the next level. He replied that it would have taken him longer if he hadn't helped them. He said that not only had he returned victorious, but he had also brought his grandchildren back safe and sound from the death arena. He was very grateful. Then Tianju approached the protagonist and said, sir, his grandfather specially chose this residence for him. No one will interfere with his cultivation here. Security is top-notch, so no one can approach him undetected. The protagonist looked at the key in his hands and thought, even the key radiates spiritual energy. It seemed the Gu family had gone to great lengths to please him. He then took the key and said, wonderful. Gu Wen said, this is the least he can do for him. They've called more people to search for the spiritual eye, so they should expect news soon. Then the protagonist rose from his seat and, approaching Gu Wen, said that he was more useful than he thought. The next second, he placed his finger on Gu Wen's forehead and released energy. Tianju shouted, Grandpa! Tianjin turned around and thought, this feels familiar. The next second, Gu Wen fell out of his chair, and Tianju, perplexed, asked, sir, why? The MC said that since his strength had increased, he couldn't help but reward them. The next second, Gu Wen rose to his feet and shouted in surprise, oh my god, he can stand on his own again. Tianju began to cry and shouted, Grandpa. Gu Wen, trying to hold back his tears, said that he had already resigned himself to spending the rest of his life in a wheelchair. Then he knelt before the protagonist and said, sir, he is very grateful to you for your kindness. He hopes that someday he will be able to repay him in kind. He replied that he should be loyal to him, and he would rise to even greater power. After a while, Mei came out of the pool, hearing her phone ring. She answered and asked, hello? She understood. At that moment, a man approached her and asked, what's wrong, Mei? She replied, it's nothing. Just some boy who imagined himself the leader of her gang. A stupid boy who decided to compete with her. The man leaned towards her and asked if she needed his help. She replied in the negative. She would teach him a lesson herself. After a while, Tianju pointed to the side and said that his grandfather had personally designed this residence. Did he like it? The protagonist walked forward and thought it was much better than his previous shack. He said he would go. And then Tianju waved his hand and said that, in that case, they would not bother him. Tianjin waved her hand and said, bye sir. He replied, see you later. After that, he walked forward and thought there was a high concentration of spiritual energy in the air. Maybe he could fix his blade? Then he sat down in a meditative pose and pointed the forge and blade forward. He said, the blood pearl formed after that guy blew himself up. He suggested using it for good. The spirit, taking the item, said, brains. The protagonist said that if he helped him, he would get his brains. Then Shui Yu stretched out on the roof and said, who could doubt that her master owned such an ancient magical cauldron? Then the protagonist directed energy to the forge and thought, too long, I must remember to find another cauldron. He can't waste so much time fixing the sword. The next second, a new sword appeared from the forge, and the protagonist said, finally. He took the weapon, and approaching the spirit said, well done, the sword is better than the last one. He said, brains. But the next second, MC pushed off the ground and said, he should wait, he'll check first. The next second, he swung his sword and thought, Ling Yue's sword technique, invisibility. Then he disappeared, several powerful slashing attacks slamming into the mountain, leaving crevices. The protagonist thought he couldn't have imagined such power in his past life. What an unusual sensation. Why did his body lose control of energy? The next second, he began to fall and said, I poured in too much energy. The sword pierced the ground and he landed and asked, what was that? Shui Yu said, it seems someone has experienced a heavenly recoil. Her master, although possessing great power, doesn't yet know all the intricacies of the heavenly foundation. He asked, what kind of foundation? She didn't say anything about that. She replied, the power of the heavenly foundation lies in the release and accumulation of spiritual power. The energy circulates in a figure-8 pattern, but ordinary energy, which the heavens aren't designed for, is often insufficient for such manipulations, and ordinary energy shouldn't be poured into the spiritual cauldron unless the master wants it to leak out. But how lucky the master is to have it. Dual cultivation will help him. He looked at her and said, she means that since he possesses power of a different level, he can't use the energy he's accustomed to? She replied, the foundation of the heavens quickly absorbs ordinary energy. He won't be able to perform it at the same speed. First, he needs to find a suitable spell before he can begin concocting the golden elixir. Then she looked to the side and added, Master, Miss Mufen has arrived. She stepped forward and said, Master Li Zan, she has received permission. After a while, they walked through the forest, and Shui Yu said, it smells so delicious. Then the old man approached Mu Feng and said, Madam, and she said she wanted to show the location to a distinguished guest. He said, the pass only allows one person to pass. Who is this high-ranking guest to her? She thought, oh shit, she didn't expect the master to bring her with him. Only they can pass together. Then she said hesitantly, Master Li Zan, the Mu family keeps secrets from prying eyes and only allows entry in the presence of its members. His subordinate must stay here. He replied, no problem. And Shui Yu shouted indignantly, what does this mean? She is the most valued person, and she is not his subordinate. She is his companion. Then Mufang approached her and, smiling awkwardly, said that she was asking for forgiveness, in which case she should have taken 2 permits. Shuyu folded her arms across her chest and said resentfully that she didn't need her apology. The next second, she handed her the plant, and Shuyu looked at it happily and said, "Oh damn, but she is not an ordinary cat." And then the old man said to let them see them out. The cat grabbed the plant, dropped to the ground, and said, "Damn it. Why did it turn out like this?" Meanwhile, the people continued on their way, and the old man turned around and said, "Madam, the medicinal herbs in the garden are very valuable. He asks her and her distinguished guests to treat them with care." He stopped near a tall door, then it opened, and the protagonist thought about how many spiritual herbs there were here. Medicinal herbs are divided into 4 types: heavenly, earthly, and xuan. Each is strikingly different from the next. A heavenly type plant can regenerate flesh and bone, while an earthly type plant stops bleeding and acts as a painkiller. Mufang said, "Master Li Zan, the entire garden belongs to the Mu family. He can take any plant he likes, but," he thought, "but at the moment he can't handle the level of this one." She asked, "Master?" He crouched down next to the plant. "Xuan level herb," he thought. "Xuan level spiritual herb?" He didn't expect to see this here. His teacher from his past life would have given anything to obtain this plant. He'd only encountered earthly level ones. If he were here now, what plans would have crossed his mind? Then Mufang leaned toward him and asked, "Sir, do you have medicine?" "They have medicine of a higher quality. Perhaps it would be better to search for something more suitable in the mountainous terrain?" He replied, "No, for now this is what he needs." He directed energy forward, grasping the plant in barriers. Mufang wondered if the Lord had sharp eyes. She said as he said. Then the protagonist began concentrating energy in his hands and thought, "It's difficult to turn a spiritual herb into an elixir, but in liquid form it has a much greater healing effect." Watching him, Mufang thought, "The power of water? The Lord is full of surprises. He wants to dissolve this?" Then he clenched his fists. Energy scattered in all directions. She asked, "Master, is he alright?" The protagonist thought that people are used to enjoying the benefits of nature without giving anything back. But everything comes at a price, and then only the strongest survive. At that moment, MC walked forward, channeling energy, and Mufang wondered in surprise, "What is he doing?" The protagonist thought, "Spiritual herbs are something else." He was finally able to understand this from personal experience. Mufang thought, "He wants to destroy everything here." Then they heard a voice. "Who is there?" The Mu family's daughter-in-law, Luo Chunshin, a high-level cultivator, came out to them. She folded her arms and shouted, "How dare he destroy the Mu family's domain? Is he tired of living?" MC thought, "A high-level cultivator? Medicinal plants give the Mu family good benefits." Mufang walked forward and said that she apologized, but Master Li didn't mean it. She screamed, "She's from the Mu family. Why didn't she do anything, even though she saw what this man was doing in their garden? She shouldn't think she can get away with it just because she's her father's favorite." She raised her hand, but the protagonist suddenly appeared in front of her, stopping her hand and saying that he was the one causing the commotion in the garden, not her. Chunjin jumped back and screamed, "Where did he come from? He destroyed the garden and is still protecting this fool? He will pay for his insolence." The next second, she unleashed her tree breath on him. The protagonist easily dodged and asked, "Is that all?" She frowned indignantly and said, "He doesn't value his own life at all." She said she couldn't even imagine the power she possessed, and he asked in bewilderment, "Did she really think that?" Mufang remarked that she was indeed furious, after which Chunshin pounced on them and wished Li Zan a speedy send-off to hell. Mufang immediately started running to avoid being hit, and MC said that he was just about to try out his improved body. Mufang worriedly told him to run, and as soon as the energy streams approached him, he erected a shield above himself. Chunshin was very surprised by what she saw, and he, shaking off the dust, asked, "Has she calmed down yet?" She became very angry and exclaimed, "Where does he get so much impudence? He is currently on the Mu family's territory. No one dares humiliate her." He himself forced her to take extreme measures. Today is the last day he lives. She released powerful streams of energy, spreading throughout the area. Mufang warned Li Zan that she had only used the dancing willow leaf technique at the 8th family competition. He needed to be more careful. He replied that he understood, and mentally noted that she had decided to use a wood artifact to temporarily enhance her skills. Her current level was far from the lowest. Mufang told Chunshin that she was the one who brought him here, that she bore full responsibility, and she exclaimed, "Who is she to tell her what to do? She would kill him first and then deal with her." The spirit behind her fired a sharp gust of wind at them, which exploded against the shield, and Mufang apologized to Li Zan, saying it was her fault. But when she realized that she was safe, she was surprised. Standing behind the shield, MC told his opponent that she was incredibly weak. He was usually prudent with weak people, but since she didn't mind getting her hands bloody, he wouldn't spare her. He pointed his hands at her and used a Taoist element, thunderclap. Immediately after, a flash of lightning shot from his hand, and she cried out in horror, "What happened? Why wasn't he even scratched?" She commanded the spirit to immediately repel the attack, after which the lightning reached them, but the spirit was too weak to protect her. The impact threw her aside. She fell to the ground and thought that her strength had left her. Why did her spirit weaken? How could it even exist in this world? While she was trying to get up, Li Zan approached her and said that she must be held accountable for intending to commit murder. Mufang hastened to stop him, because half of the family's power was in her hands. If something happened to her, her brother would also intervene. She asked him not to touch her and to return to the medicinal herbs, and he said that one day her kindness would turn against her. For her safety, he will leave her, but she will never stand on her own 2 feet again. After that, he threw a lightning bolt at her feet, and she screamed in pain, after which she called him scum in rage and exclaimed that he destroyed half of the Mu family's garden and also injured her leg. Let him walk and turn around now. She will cut his entire family and himself into small pieces. He did not like her threats. He measured her with a gloomy face, then suddenly lunged at her and, grabbing her by the neck, lifted her off the ground and wished death on her. Blood began to flow from her mouth. She began to choke. He continued to hold her like that, which made Mufeng very nervous. And when she finally stopped twitching, MC let her go. She fell to the ground and he turned to Mufeng, suggesting that she get back to work. She pulled herself together and noticed that almost all the herbs were destroyed. This is the end. Chunjin is dead. The garden is destroyed. Everything is over. Li Zan touched his forehead and declared that with his body and soul, he nourishes all existence. Life energy fell to the ground, causing the grass to revive, and he waved his hand, declaring that life begins in the sky. The heavenly path returns to the source. Streams of energy swirled around him, after which a crystal containing a cluster of pure spiritual energy appeared in his hand. Mufeng was greatly surprised by this, and he said with a smile that in exchange for the stone, he hoped she would forgive him for the mess. After this, he went home, confused by the fact that the door was open. Shuyu was oblivious and licking the grass when suddenly he heard Tianjin's voice calling for help. He immediately ran into the room from which the voice was coming and worriedly asked, "What happened?" But what he saw shocked him. Tianjin and Jiqi were sitting together in the bathroom, and the latter was telling her to stop screaming. What kind of commotion was she causing? Seeing Li Zan, they stared at him in surprise, and he immediately turned away from them and asked for their forgiveness, thinking they were in danger. Jiqi embarrassedly wondered when he managed to return, and Tianjin stood up to her full height and said that she brought her back. She didn't think he would return so quickly. Let him look at her. He made her blush. He left the bathroom, saying that he would not disturb them, after which he sighed heavily and left with an embarrassed face, thinking that it was reckless. Seeing this, Shuyu turned into a girl and asked if something was bothering him. He could always turn to her for help. He waved his hand and told her that it was none of her business, after which she approached him and said that she thought differently. She's his companion and has the right to know. What if he really needs her help? He sat down on the sofa and she noticed that he was still under the influence of the spiritual herb. He wants to know how to prevent energy leakage. He told her to speak, and she explained that he should take energy pills to prevent this. To be more precise, they not only reduce the flow of incoming energy, but also stabilize his condition. With them, his cultivation will be much better. He said that he had never heard of them. How can he get them? She spread his legs and climbed onto the sofa, saying that he needed to feed her first, and then she would tell him everything. Suddenly, girls ran into the room. Dragging Jiqi along with her, Tianjin called out to Li Zan and told him to look at what clothes they bought. Seeing Shuyu sitting on him, they both froze and their faces blushed with embarrassment, after which Tianjin exclaimed, "What are they doing?" Jiqi asked, "So this is the Shuyu who helps him with his practice?" He pushed the woman away and asked, "Shouldn't she be with the Gu family? Why is she here? Who is accompanying her?" She told him no one. She just wanted to ask him something. He asked what was the matter, after which she took his hand and sheepishly said that it was a personal matter. They went into another room and Shuyu, looking after them, said that she was such a wonderful girl. It was a pity that he didn't appreciate her. Tianjin smiled and said that Jiqi supported him during difficult times. Meanwhile, they went out into the garden and Jiqi said that Tianjin told her everything. He had been through a lot in the past few days. He fought the blood demon in the death arena, punished Dongfang Yuanshu, and she can only hide behind his back. She looks pathetic, doesn't she? She remained silent and stated that she did not want to be a burden. She also wants to protect herself, her mother, and him. He was surprised by her words, after which she stood in front of him and asked if he could teach her superpowers. He refused her, and she thought sadly that she knew it. Her abilities are only enough for healing. She is too weak. Begging his forgiveness, she walked back to the house in tears, but he stopped her, saying that superpowers are a weak power. He can teach her cultivation. Hearing this, she turned to him in surprise. Meanwhile, Mu Mingqi, the eldest son of the Mu family, ran into his father, Mu Hogan's room and asked if he saw what Mu Feng had done. She had been loitering around all day, dragging some weakling into their garden, who, by the way, killed his fiancée. He asked him to take some action, and he said that she was a little fool. At that moment, Mu Feng entered the room, about to tell her father something, and her brother exclaimed in rage that she was an accomplice to the crime. She stood and watched as his fiancée was killed. How did she have the nerve to show herself to him? Chunshin's body was not even cold yet. She said that Master Li deliberately destroyed the garden. She takes responsibility for Chunshin's death. Her brother exclaimed in rage. Does she think her life is worth even a little bit of his fiancé's life? Mu Feng showed them the crystal and asked her father to let her explain everything, and then let him do as he sees fit. Just let him not touch Li Zan. Seeing it, they were both very surprised because it was an S-class crystal. Her father asked who gave it to her, and she told him that it was Master Li's payment for the destroyed garden. uncertain. Hogan asked, so he wants to make amends with the crystal to the Mu family? Even the Blackwater gang doesn't have them. Who is this? Would he like to collaborate with them? She replied that he was willing to be their partner if they gave him full access to the family's medicinal herbs. He praised her, and Mingchi wondered when this fool had become so smart. He immediately began to be polite to her, calling her dear sister, and said that Master Li was a wonderful friend to their family. Could she introduce him to him as soon as possible? She looked at him doubtfully and reminded him that he had killed his fiancée. Was he absolutely certain? He smirked and replied that she was only a fiancée, not a wife. For their family to prosper, sacrifices had to be made. She was already dead anyway, so why dredge up the past? She called him shameless, after which Hogan told her that the blame for Chunjin's death lay with her, so she must serve her punishment. She would live alone for a month and reflect on her behavior. In the meantime, her brother would take her position. She should give him the crystal. Mingchi was delighted and decided to mock her, saying that he was so reluctant to take on such responsibility, lest he overexert himself. As a brother, he advised her to find herself a husband and not worry about anything. She cast a displeased glance at him and advised him not to be so self-confident. Master Li was not so easy to do business with. Meanwhile, GC asked in surprise, will he really teach her cultivation? He said he would help her restore her spiritual powers so she could cultivate immortality, but she would lose her innate abilities. Was she willing to do that? She confidently agreed, after which he rushed towards her and used the technique, Desolate Blade, Awakening Righteousness. He poked several points on her body, causing her to feel terrible pain, and her supernormal abilities began to leave her body. She told him it hurt, and he said he had cleared her meridians. Now she should feel the fluctuations of spiritual energy around her. Just don't resist the flow. She concentrated and saw the energy flowing around her and told him that she could feel it. He advised her to focus on her heart and gather the energy in her body bit by bit and then release it with her mind. She tensely pursed her lips and extended her hand forward. She tried to do everything as he said, but she only managed to release part of the energy. Because of this, she became upset and said that she was so weak, and he took a closer look at her and noticed something surprising. It turns out she had a rare ethereal root. This is an extremely rare artifact that transforms the spiritual energy of the heavens into unimaginable power. It cannot be contained by any methods. In history, there was already a figure who elevated herself to the level of gods and who built her own world. Even the world of immortals feared her. He smiled, and GC asked if he found it funny. He said that she had promising prospects, but that was enough for today. They needed to wait a few days to return to their studies. The rarer the root, the purer and more spiritual energy they needed. They needed the spiritual eye more than ever now. She happily thought that it was good that she had it. A new day dawned, and the news reported that 2 missing female students had recently been reported at Tongyan College. This was reportedly the 18th such case in the city. So far, the police have not received any leads, so the perpetrator is still at large. Law enforcement agencies urge students to pay close attention to personal safety, avoid walking alone, and call emergency services if necessary. While Tianjin was eating chips and watching TV, Jishi popped into her room and asked where Li Zan was. She replied that he had left 30 minutes ago, and she thought in shock. Already? Had she really not made an impression on him? Tianjin warned her about dangerous criminals on the loose, and she headed for the exit, telling her not to worry. Master Gu would be with her. Meanwhile, MC came to meet Mingchi. He kindly welcomed him to his family's house and remarked that he looked extremely well today. He extended his hand, but he ignored the gesture and asked who he was. Where is Mu Feng? He replied that he was her brother. Unfortunately, his younger sister was ill and couldn't greet him personally, but that's why he was here to answer all his questions. After that, Li Zhen headed for the exit, saying that he was doing business with Mu Feng, not the Mu family, but the guy stopped him and said that his sister had always been extremely reckless. They were 2 men. Couldn't they find common ground? As the eldest son, he could offer him greater benefits. MC discontentedly told him to step aside unless he wanted to end up like his fiancée, and then left. Mingchi cursed and, watching him go, furiously thought, who did he think he was? He would already be dead if he didn't need him. Does he only want Mu Feng? He'll even crawl to him on his knees. Shui Yu, meanwhile, said that she wasn't in the room. He lied. He asked her to help him find her, after which she took his hand and winked at him, telling him not to worry, she was with him. After that, they went to look for Mu Feng and found themselves in the middle of a field. MC looked around and said that they had been walking for 3 hours. Is she sure she is here? She caught her breath and confirmed it, saying that cats have a very keen sense of smell. She is close, but her legs already hurt so much. What is she doing in such a remote place? They reached some warehouse and she said that they were there. She looked at him with a smile and asked, is she really useful? What would he do without her? The men outside the warehouse paid attention to them, then took their weapons and approached them. One of them smirked and asked Shui Yu, how did such a cute girl get lost? They will take care of her now. She glared at them, then attacked them and exclaimed in rage, who is he going to take care of? Let him show respect to her master. While she was beating them, Li Zan entered the warehouse and saw a bunch of people sitting in cages inside. Shuyu examined them and informed him that they all had superpowers. Who does he think put them here? He noticed that the spiritual energy in their bodies was sealed, and meanwhile, the cat smelled something. She informed him that it was Mu Feng's scent, which meant she was here. MC looked around, confused by the fact that there were so few guards outside, and the girl called out to him, asking if he heard that. When she looked up, she saw a snake man on the ceiling, and in fear, she immediately rushed to her master. Li Zan told the guy that he had seen enough of them and should let him come out. The snake grinned and said that he never thought he would find such a delicious treat in this abandoned warehouse. Let him give him his power, and then he will let him go unharmed. MC responded by saying that he didn't expect to see a creature disguised as a werewolf here. Because of the way he called him, he got angry and attacked him, exclaiming that he would tear him to pieces. After that, he hit him with his tail, but he defended himself under the dome and measured him with an indifferent look. The snake licked its lips and pounced on him, releasing several snakes, after which he used the petrification ability and, seeing that he had closed his eyes, asked if he could really fight it like this. Under the influence of his technique, he would bleed to death. Li Zan opened his eyes, spilling out his energy, which caused his snakes to immediately begin to burn. The snake became nervous and wondered what he had done. It was as if he was being cut to pieces. He began to circle around him, saying that he had underestimated him, and he disappeared under the dome again. The snake exclaimed that it was his turn. He used a cobra throw and fired a beam of energy at him, which began to spread out upon impact with the protective dome. When everything went quiet, he looked with disappointment at the empty space where Li Zan should have been, and said that he had expended so much energy. MC suddenly appeared behind him and asked, did he lose something? He used the absorption technique and fired his energy at the snake, causing the entire warehouse to light up with a bright flash. Shui Yu finally came to her senses. She stood up and asked where the snake was, then approached him. It turned out that he had already tied the snake with its own tail and ordered it to tell him who his boss was. He nervously replied that he was just a security guard. He only knew that the Dongfang family was conducting experiments, nothing more. Li Zan noted that he was hearing that name again. Is he a werewolf? He replied that he was an experimental subject. He remembers being locked in a capsule with some kind of liquid, after which he turned into this. There are dozens of people like him. MC became curious about why the Dongfang family was crossing humans and animals, and he ordered Shu Yu to keep an eye on him while he went to look for Mu Feng. The cat wondered what snakes tasted like, and he, seeing her look, became very scared. While Li Zan went to inspect the cages, Mu Feng was indeed there, sitting in one of the cages. He noticed that someone had placed a seal on it from the world of immortals, and this someone knows how to combine the spiritual power of people and animals. With his current strength, removing the seal would not be difficult. He broke the cage and picked up the girl in his arms, asking how she got here. She told him that her older brother had asked her to bring medicinal herbs here, but as soon as she stepped through the threshold, she immediately lost consciousness. He currently manages the Mu family's affairs, so his request to deliver herbs to the slaughterhouse in the middle of the night didn't seem strange to her. MC put all the oddities together and realized it was the signature of that very same cult. A truck soon pulled up to the warehouse to pick up the goods. A driver named Sang got out of the truck, and the snake smiled and remarked that he was late today. Seeing 3 unconscious guards, he asked what had happened, and the snake told him that some had tried to escape, but he had caught them. Sang entered the warehouse and said that Dr. K had ordered him to pick up Miss Mu. Where was she? He told him that she was right by the exit, and after examining her more closely, he said that the goods were defective and it was time for him to load them. After that, he took her away, or so it seemed at first. But in fact, Mu Feng remained in the warehouse. She approached the snake and looked worriedly at the departing truck, asking if they should really let it go. He told her that everything would be fine. But this snake was not a snake at all. 10 minutes earlier, they learned that someone was supposed to come and pick up the goods today. Shu Yu winked at Li Zan and said that the secret recipe for eliminating spiritual energy leakage was hidden in these werewolves. She threw her arms around his shoulders and playfully said that she had already thought of a plan to get to the enemy. She would tell him everything if he kissed her. She stuck out her tongue, but he immediately shut her mouth and told her to get down to business. She said that she would cast a spell to disguise herself as a snake, and he would pretend to be Mu Feng so that they would take him away. Currently, she returned to her body and threw her arm around the girl's shoulder, telling her not to worry about him. The Dongfang family would do nothing to him. She said doubtfully that it was unknown whether the snake told the truth or not. Besides, they had no idea who the ferryman was. They would realize that Master Li was under the illusion. Since his spiritual power was much stronger than hers, he was risking his life for her, so she could not sit idly by. Now they need to go back to her house. She'll try to explain everything to her father. Meanwhile, MC sat in the truck and thought, there's a sect called the Earth Madmen who created the demon spirit reincarnation technique. This technique absorbs spiritual energy, soul, blood, and other characteristics of a cultivator. They succeeded in this unusually quickly. However, for the same reason, they are vulnerable to a soul-devouring attack. At that moment, the truck stopped. Sang opened the doors, and a faint light hit him in the face. After that, he dragged the cage into the tunnel, and Li Zan, for the sake of credibility, began to beg him for mercy, and he responded by saying that she could scream as much as she wanted. She didn't have long left anyway. Suddenly, MC felt a familiar aura that boded ill, and it was coming from behind the bloody door. The guy entered that room and told Dr. K that he had brought a new experimental subject. The man asked discontentedly, can't he see that he's busy? Let him leave her somewhere. Sang fell silent, and Li Zan looked around. The capsules contained the Mo brothers, whom Tianjin had defeated in the death arena. It seemed they would never find peace even in death. Meanwhile, the doctor sent a new solution through the tubes and laughed, saying he was so curious to see how much the brothers would change. The solution flowed through the tubes to the test subjects, causing one of the brothers to immediately feel a surge of strength and open his eyes. He broke the capsule with a loud scream, and Sang noted that it was another failure. The boy lunged at the doctor, who exclaimed in irritation that he had broken everything again, and Sang rushed to his aid. He used his fire abilities and hit the boy in the face, sending him flying, and the doctor asked him to deal with him or he would destroy his lab. Sang noted that the solution had worked. Was he sure he wanted to get rid of him? A hard layer appeared on the subject's body. He looked at the doctor and wished him death, but the doctor exclaimed that this was all nonsense. He was another failed experiment. After that, the guy attacked Sang, and he, holding out his hand, said that it was time for him to rest in peace. The subject immediately burst into flames, and MC mentally noted that he was in the final stages of cultivation. He had the same superpower as Tianju, but his concentration was significantly higher. When only a trace of the subject remained on the floor, Sang dusted off his hands and said he was finished. The doctor joyfully called out to him and said that he would forever remain his favorite. And what would he do without him? He indifferently said that he had delivered the goods. After which the doctor glanced at the cage with a smirk and told his assistants to bring a new capsule and place Miss Mu in it. When Li Zan was placed in the capsule, he remembered how she had said before transforming into a snake that she needed to penetrate the spiritual technique of demon transformation, and he thought that if her words were true, then his personal intervention was necessary to stop the leak of spiritual power. He wasn't the only one who was stuffed into the capsule. Chunshin was too. The doctor approached the control panel and said that Mu Mingqi was a true tyrant, not allowing his wife to rest in peace. He wondered what would happen if the wood power and the power of control were combined. He connected the tubes and advised Miss Mu to endure this experiment or she would die in agony. After using the medicine on Li Zan, he was transported to his soul realm and found himself in Baishu's body, where he was chained up. He looked around, trying to figure out where he was, and Chunshin's image appeared before him. She asked, did he think he could get rid of her? It was only in his dreams. She would take his body and power. She would haunt him forever. A stream of energy pierced his body. He gritted his teeth in pain and thought that the art of reincarnation still negatively affects the spiritual essence of the original owner. Evil spirits only take advantage of this. He continued to endure this pain and wondered if the demon would really devour him. He gritted his teeth. His whole body was tense. He looked deep inside himself, got to his heart, and it began to beat faster. Power immediately rushed to his hands. He broke the shackles and thought that by merging internal energy into external energy, the spiritual energy in his body was protected. Now the energy will not leak out, and the internal energy spreads throughout all the cells of his body. Meanwhile, the doctor said that the power had reached 50%, but nothing is happening. Let them increase the power by another 20. Baishu looked around. He no longer felt Chunshin's presence. It seems Shuyu has succeeded. Suddenly, the real Li Zan's voice rang out, calling out to him and saying that he advocates righteousness but uses devilish methods. Will his heart be able to withstand it? He has changed. He is no longer the coward he knew before. MC turned to him and asked what he meant. Li Zan smirked in response, then pounced on him and struck him, saying that he wanted to get his body back. Baishu parried his attack, causing a wave of energy to spread across the area, and he said that he was his inner demon that he must defeat. Does he really think that demonic tricks will save him? Li Zan said that the two of them are one. What's wrong with them uniting? They both increased the distance between them, and MC, summoning several swords, said that his path is out of his reach. He performed the same trick and exclaimed, if that's the case, then why is he here? Let him not resist. He controls his body, but he can do this with him too. There is no great path in the world. There are the strong and the weak. Let him remember all those he once killed. After all, one day he himself will become the one he hates with all his heart. Baishu parried his blow and said that they choose their own end, and he exclaimed that he knows that he has no abilities. So why is he mocking him? Apparently he has no choice. MC's eyes widened for a moment. Several swords fell on him, and Li Zan told him to join him. Together they will punish their enemies and not let them rise above them. He stood up and said that he was sorry that he once had to endure so much pain, but his past and the injustice of the world from which he suffered are much more painful than him. He created a sword in his hand, then pounced on the demon and pierced his body with a sharp blade, saying that it was over. Li Zan asked him to wait. Why doesn't he destroy him? He doesn't need his pity. Bai Shu turned to him and said that he had already taken over his body. Someday he would find him in the afterlife, seal his soul, and free him from reincarnation. Before his resurrection, he would bring goodness to the world. He stared at him in surprise, then looked down and thanked him. His body glowed with energy escaping from it, and Bai Shu used a soul technique on it, pulling it toward himself. When the energy entered his chest, he felt something strange, as if he were ascending. Meanwhile, Kay was delighted. He looked at the capsule with Miss Mu and began to hug her, saying that it was fantastic. MC began to come to his senses, noticing the changes in the girl's face. Sang warned the doctor of the danger, after which the capsule broke, and Li Zan dispelled the illusion. Sang asked who he was, and he answered that he was the one who would give him what he deserved. Kay ordered Sang to deal with him, and he stepped forward and asked who he was and where he had taken Miss Mu. He told him he had no right to know, and then the guy pounced on him, saying that he didn't care who he was, but since he was here, he wouldn't get out alive. He easily blocked the blow with his shield, which surprised the guy, and immediately stepped back. Kay smiled and noted that he had defensive power, which was what they needed. They needed to take him. Sang ignited his fist with flames and said that he would now see how he deflected such a blow, and then pounced on him again. This time he managed to leave a crack in his protective dome. MC, meanwhile, thought that this move was similar to the Kunlun sect's Fist of the Flame Deity technique. He concentrates the furious spirit of flame in his fists and increases the force of the explosion. With such strength, he is comparable to Ten Tianjiu. Sang lunged at him again, delivering a powerful blow with a shout. But to his surprise, Li Zan grabbed his fist. He pulled out a dagger and remarked that his approach was very crude. A true deity technique isn't built on brute force. Confused, Sang watched the stream of flame in front of his face, after which MC swung the dagger, but the man vanished. He glanced around the room, and then a clot of flame appeared behind him, from which Sang leaped. MC saw him and vanished, surprising his opponent, then appeared to his side and immediately struck. Sang parried the blow and jumped back, thinking he could also teleport. Where did he get so many abilities? He became nervous and asked who he was and what he wanted. MC ignored his question and asked when he learned the Kunlun sect's flame technique. He will force him to use all his strength because he hasn't played enough yet. The guy was furious that he dared to look down on him, and the doctor, seeing his body engulfed in flames, ordered him to stop. He would destroy his entire lab. He responded by saying that he was too strong, and the lab could be rebuilt. The Dongfang family had a lot of money, after all. After that, the flames intensified. The lab technicians began to run away, and one of them, turning to his colleague, asked why she was standing there. She responded by saying that Sang had the advantage. Why would they run away? He asked. Doesn't she know anything? In the previous battle with the squad, he killed them without a second thought. He goes crazy when he unleashes all his power, and the damage can be incredibly huge. Meanwhile, Sang prepared for an attack and told Li Zan that no matter who he was, he simply had to die, and he rushed towards him, telling him to attack. After that, the guy fired fireballs at him, but he deftly dodged and began to approach him. At that moment, Sang snapped his fingers, gathering fire, and then waved his hand, reflecting his attack. And he thought, is this his technique? The guy snapped his fingers again, swirling the flames next to him, and then used the flame tornado skill, causing everything around him to quickly burst into flames. But it didn't harm him in any way. He laughed and asked, is this what you call a technique? With one swing of his sword, he released frost. The ice reached the guy's feet and bound them, and he exclaimed in surprise, so he can also control ice? Why is he better than him? He glared at him threateningly and ordered him to tell him where he stole the flame deity's techniques. But he wasn't going to answer and asked, is he sure he can defeat him? His body slowly began to burn away, becoming a fire monster and saying that he was the only one who forced him to use his trump card. Even if he burned everything here to the ground, he will take him with him. MC smirked and remarked that this was interesting. He was already at level 5 of the flame deity technique. Then he would allow him to witness his Yang technique. He drew the name of the technique in the air, and then a flame deity appeared behind him, making the boy very nervous. He exclaimed that this was so unfair, and then the deity struck him with all its might, executing him on the spot. His body flew straight to the worried doctor's feet, and Li Zan approached him and said that he was dead. Now it was his turn. Kay nervously gritted his teeth and told him not to think he was invincible just because he killed him. Until he died, he could look at his greatest failure. At that moment, the monster, who had been restrained by the chains this whole time, saw the heat emanating from them and roared loudly. He instantly broke the shackles, then slammed his hands into the wall with all his might, punching a hole into the room. Turning around, MC saw a huge monster called Zero. The doctor ordered him to kill him, and MC now understood who was emanating that aura. He was the one who made him feel threatened. Immediately after that, the monster pounced on him and struck him, but he erected a shield in front of himself in time. The monster's blow was so powerful that its claws pierced it, something Li Zan clearly didn't expect. After that, Zero struck him again, throwing him against the wall and hitting it with such force that cracks appeared on it. After that, he looked at his opponent and thought that the last battle had required a lot of spiritual energy from him, and he was a level higher than him. This battle should end quickly. A second later, the monster was right in front of him. He mentally noted how fast it was, then moved behind it, causing it to miss. He then used 2 sword techniques at once, throwing a fiery blade at it, but Zero reacted quickly and blocked the blow, surprising him again. The monster growled, gripping his sword tighter, and the doctor, with a smirk, advised Li Zan to start praying not to fall into its hands. Zero rushed in, throwing his own blade at it with all his might, which he was forced to block. But the monster's strength again proved too great, causing it to collapse. Zero immediately appeared above him, striking it with a few more blows, and the doctor laughed, exclaiming that this was the end. This truly was the experimental object of which he was most proud. But when the smoke cleared, all his joy was gone. Li Zan was no longer at the site of the blow. It turned out he was already behind the monster and said that with the power of the core formation sphere, he could only rely on instincts to fight and live like a puppet. This is truly pathetic. Then he will be merciful and free him. Swinging his sword, he used the Haori technique, causing 9 fireballs, 9 suns to appear around him. Birds flew out of them. They rushed towards the monster and pierced its body along with Li Zan's blade. He watched as the monster fell unconscious to the floor, then looked at the doctor and said that it was his turn now. He advised him not to get ahead of himself. How could his proudest project be defeated by him so easily? The fight was not over. Quickly healing his wounds, Zero stood up and roared loudly, and then immediately pounced on Li Zan and struck him, which the latter managed to dodge. He used the Nine Suns technique again, dealing him a powerful blow, and said that that was all. A light erupted from the wound on the monster's chest, and then fiery birds flew out, and its body caught fire. The monster roared loudly in pain and then fell to the floor, and the doctor called out to it worriedly, asking what was wrong with it. He needed to use his self-healing power. MC said it was useless. This sword technique is designed to defeat evil spirits and heretics, and it can also add regeneration of chi and blood. Even if he used his self-healing ability now, it wouldn't be able to cope with such wounds. The doctor nervously grabbed the remotes with which he controlled the experimental subjects and exclaimed, "How could this happen? There are other test subjects who can definitely kill him." But Li Zan immediately swung his sword, cutting off his arms, then sat down next to him and asked, "Did he teach these test subjects all these techniques? Where did he learn about them?" He screamed in pain and asked, "Does he mean the supertransference technique?" The Dongfang family informed him of this, but he didn't know where they got it from. He told him everything he knew, so let him go. He asked, "So he means to say that the Dongfang family supports him, and he can't kill him? The innocent victims who died at his hands deserve an explanation. But he shouldn't worry. He will soon send the entire Dongfang family to hell to accompany him." After these words, he finished him off. The lab quickly emptied. He glanced at the defeated opponents and thought that everyone here had very strong abilities. It seemed the Dongfang family had found some kind of unusual opportunity. First, he needed to notify Gu about this so they could take control of this place. A pig flew out of his body, screaming that it wanted brains so much, and he told it that they could become its food, which could be considered something useful. While the pig was devouring them, he left the room and looked around. The traces of artificial mining in these caves are ancient and definitely don't belong to the Dongfang family. He doesn't know where they found this demonic cultivation technique. He walked forward along the corridor and saw a huge hole in the floor. And at that moment the pig hugged his arm. He asked, "Aren't you full?" Noticing something, the pig began pointing at the hole with an alluring smile, and he sensed a faint sign of life. He decided to go down and investigate, then jumped into the hole. There was a bunch of emaciated zombies transporting the dead. He mentally noted that these people had lost their vitality and seemed to be controlled by something, and apparently, they were all failed experiments. Even after death, the last vestiges of usefulness are extracted from them. The bodies of the dead were completely decomposed, disintegrated, and then they were carried away for other purposes. But where were they being sent? He followed the zombies and saw that they were placing the body in the 100-soul refining furnace. This is a magical artifact linked to the earth altar of a branch of the demonic sect. It uses the fire of resentment to purify souls, turning them into a source of power for practicing demonic techniques. This artifact and the demonic transformation technique are actually cultivation methods. Despite their power, he does not practice demonic arts. He looked at the pig and asked, "Did he bring him here to help him absorb this?" He replied that he couldn't handle it himself, and that his current status meant little to him. Without progress, he might eventually give up on it. Now it all depends on his abilities. The pig began to draw in energy, then grew in size and flew toward the artifact. And MC stepped aside and said that he would watch the zombies and let him focus on the battle. The furnace activated. It turned into a golem and headed towards the pig. He squealed loudly, then grabbed the artifact, trying to hold it, but it was stronger. Green flames quickly approached him. The furnace bit into him with its teeth, and the pig screamed with tears in his eyes that he couldn't handle it. Li Zan asked, "Did he start begging for mercy after the first face-to-face meeting?" The path is eternal, and there are many dangers along it. He must give his all in every fight. Even if he's an artificial creation, he must also cultivate his Taoist spirit. Or did he think this was the last battle? Let him not be like those living dead beneath his feet, trapped in the shadows. His words filled the pig with strength, and he immediately bit into the oven and took a bite out of it. Watching his progress, MC smiled faintly and thought, "That's better. It looks like he won't have to interfere." The pig was delighted. He began to pound the oven with his fists and soon dismantled it into small pieces and absorbed all its power. Li Zan remarked that it was not bad. He absorbed it so quickly. Now his strength could be considered respectable. After that, the pig returned to his small form and hugged him by the hand with tears in his eyes, saying that he almost died. He was so scared. Noticing that he was now talking about more than just brains, he remarked that his intelligence had also increased. After this, the pig handed him a soul-cleansing pill and said that if consumed, it would cause pain and death. Time passed, and the Gu family's people arrived. Gu Wen bowed to the master and informed him that he had sent people to take control of this place and collect evidence of the Dongfang family's crimes. He praised him for his excellent work and said that he wanted to warn him about something. He should not try to repeat these experiments. He did not want them to become a second Dongfang family. The old man smiled nervously and told him that he knew what to do. After this, Shuiyu called Li Zan and excitedly reported that something important had happened in the Mu family's house. After this, she screamed and the call ended. He became wary and thought, "What kind of danger is this that even she cannot cope with?" When Mu Fen came to her father and told him about her brother's tricks, he did not react at all, and she realized with horror that he knew about it. Mingqi asked, doesn't she understand? Their father not only knew about this, but also agreed. Mu Feng asked why he did this to her, and he replied that the results of the experiments would help the Mu family rise, and he would do everything for that. As a family member, she should be proud to die for them. Mingqi smirked and told his sister not to misunderstand him. His intentions were good. She exclaimed, then why wasn't her brother the sacrifice? Is it because she's a woman? Hogan immediately hit her in the face with a whip for such words, and her brother asked, who said he didn't make the sacrifice? He sent his wife there. After this, the head of the family ordered the guards to catch his ungrateful daughter. He would personally send her to Dongfang to make amends. Meanwhile, the cat hid on the ceiling. She glanced at the guards and thought it was funny that the father was sending his own daughter to experiments. She needed to show this to the Taoist. After that, she called Li Zan and, in a frightened voice, told him everything that had happened, and deliberately cut off the call with her scream. She glanced at the girl and wondered if she should help her first, but Mu Feng was able to handle it herself. She began to emit energy and exclaimed that she would not allow him to humiliate her, after which the guards' bodies twisted and they cried out loudly in pain. Hogan began to curse loudly and said that she had truly rebelled, and his son asked him for permission to teach her respect for her elders. After that, he attacked her, but she quickly touched the floor and used her superpower, bringing the floor tiles to life, and directed this ferocious army at her brother. He defended himself from her attack with his roots and noted with a smile that it seemed that her strength had increased after meeting the master. They were connected now, weren't they? She furiously ordered him to be silent and not to dare insult him. Today, she would definitely defeat him. After that, she created a huge golem from floor tiles, which instantly dealt with his defense, and he, imbued himself with the power of ice, asked with a smirk, does she think she's the only one so strong here? But he wasn't what he used to be. Seeing his abilities, she was very surprised and exclaimed, where did he get this? Didn't he have the power of wood? He created a weapon in his hand, and invited his foolish sister to see the difference between them, after which he pounced on her golem, and she ordered him to stop. He struck, causing the golem to immediately freeze, and Mu Feng realized that it couldn't move. Her brother, meanwhile, increased the distance between them, then waved his hand, creating wooden spikes, and exclaimed that she was too weak. Wooden spikes pierced her golem, causing her to be thrown aside. Mingqi approached her, saying that this is what the Dongfang family can offer them. Now he is a role model. Hogan told his daughter that her strength is weak. Participating in experiments can increase her strength and strengthen cooperation between families. She is his child, and she must sacrifice something for the family. Mu Feng's face darkened and she asked, is she really from this family? He never loved her the way other fathers love their daughters. No matter what success she achieved, he always praised only her older brother. She could only train and study every day. She thought that if she worked so hard, she could attract his attention and become his pride. How foolish she was. No matter what success she achieved, it was nothing compared to her useless brother, who was willing to sacrifice others for his abilities. Mingqi called her a fool, asking how she dared insult him, and Hogan said that women were too petty and incapable of great things. He told his son that the Dongfang family wanted her alive, and he could handle everything himself from then on. Mingqi smiled in anticipation and said that he would first freeze her, then cut off her limbs to show the Mu family's sincerity. But just as he was about to strike her, someone grabbed his arm and stopped him. Everyone was shocked by what they saw. It was Li Zan, who had come to her aid. Mu Feng called out to him worriedly and told him to run, as he was very strong, and Mingqi immediately pounced on him, saying he didn't expect him to come to his death. MC stopped his strike with just 2 fingers, pinning the tip of the axe between them. This caused the boy to be greatly surprised and exclaimed, how is this possible? He clenched his fingers and broke the ice, then called Shuiyu and ordered her to take Mu Feng away from here so he could deal with him. The cat helped the girl up, and she asked, can he handle this alone? He replied that he was just pathetic trash, and her brother exclaimed that those were too strong words, since he was the only one out of 10,000 applicants. After that, he used his abilities, bringing down huge chunks of ice on him, and he responded by throwing the blazing sun's sword at him, breaking all the ice. The sword struck Mingqi right in the neck, but it turned out that it wasn't his real body, but just a wooden doll. He appeared next to his father and nervously noted that this guy was no ordinary man. Hogan asked, is this the master Mu Feng spoke of? With such strength, even the Dongfang family wouldn't dare provoke him. Meanwhile, the girls took cover behind a column, and Mu Feng was surprised to notice that he had become even stronger. Shuiyu said that he had ascended again, and his control of spiritual energy was becoming more precise. It was all thanks to her advice. She was so smart. Mingqi decided to continue the fight and called out to Li Zan, saying that although he was strong, he didn't understand his situation. He called his men, the warriors of the Mu clan, who immediately surrounded him from all sides, and said that they were the best of the best. And now, he wouldn't run away. He ordered the men to kill him, and they directed all their abilities at him. He drew the blazing sun's sword and engulfed it in flames, then stabbed it into the floor, causing a shockwave that threw the warriors in all directions. Mingqi was very surprised, and his father asked, what kind of technique is that? A superpower that instantly reflects back? He had never heard of such a thing. MC said it was an immortal technique, after which Hogan jumped forward and told his son that he wasn't strong in defense, so he would help him. He then used wooden spikes to create a wall in front of himself, but Li Zan's blade pierced it and hit him. Mingqi grabbed his father, preventing him from falling, and MC approached them, saying that at his age, with the support of the elixir, he had still reached the golden core stage. His abilities were too weak. Hogan fell to his knees before him and said that he and his son had been blind. The conditions he discussed with Mufeng were double what their clan was willing to grant him. His son called out to him in surprise, and Li Zan gave him a thoughtful look. Then he said they could also hand over the medicinal fields to Mufeng to ensure long-term cooperation between their families. Mingqi indignantly asked, "What does that mean?" He had promised to give the fields to him. The old man immediately slapped him in the face, calling him a scoundrel, and asked if he couldn't see the current situation. He should apologize to the master and his sister immediately. He smiled awkwardly, and MC begged him for mercy, while his son, with a gloomy expression, said that he had one more move to finish this guy off. After that, he hit his father, saying that for this, he would have to sacrifice himself. The old man's eyes filled with blood. He looked at his son in rage, not expecting such a betrayal, and Mufeng called out to him worriedly. She was ready to run to his aid, but the cat stopped her, since the fight was not over yet and it was too dangerous. After that, Hogan fell to the floor unconscious, and his son, turning into a tree monster, said that if this stupid old man had given him the Mu clan earlier, he could now be enjoying his life. This is a hidden technique of wood superpowers that only direct descendants can use. He has finally reached the peak of the golden core stage. Li Zan's eyes flashed maliciously, noting that it turned out that this was a wood spirit from the Kunlun Eternal Spring sect. He and the leader were old friends. He is a master of close combat, and his recovery is also excellent. Mingqi pounced on him, shouting that he was talking too much, but MC immediately jumped behind him and kicked him in the face, causing his jaw to crack. He felt terrible pain and thought his head would explode from his blows. His body's strength had increased significantly, but why couldn't he still keep up with his speed? He jumped to the side and prepared to attack, deciding to try again. Seeing Li Zan approaching him, he pounced on him and began swinging his fists furiously, but he deflected all of his blows. He used the power of ice and pounced on him again, saying that he would cut him down. But when he dodged his blow once again, he nervously thought, has he become even faster? After that, MC struck him with a sword, used the bright moon technique, and his body was pierced by a huge piece of ice, and then he used the mountain ringing technique. This guy's body began to quickly become covered in ice. He coughed up blood and exclaimed that he has an ice technique. But why is he still receiving damage from his ice? This is impossible, and his body cannot heal. Who is he? He remained silent, and with another swing of the sword, smashed the ice into small pieces, and only then said that it was all because he had long ago mastered the techniques of the 5 elements, and he was just trash, forcibly merged with power. That's why he can't withstand even a blow. Meanwhile, Mufeng looked at him in surprise and asked, "So this is what absolute suppression of the strong means?" Shiryu noted that she simply hadn't seen him before, then approached the master and congratulated him on another step towards ascension. Cultivating together could speed up the process. When Mufeng ran up to him, he told her that from now on, the Mu clan belonged to her, and she bowed her head to him in a respectful gesture.